Ma Tianyuan asked with a frown. What do you mean, junior brother? Yang Kai replied with a faint smile. You said that the three of them are honored guests in your unrivaled guild, so it's impossible that you don't even know their names. You're a fifth order open heaven realm master, so you're supposed to hold an important position in your sect. The fact that you know nothing about them shows that they're not in your sect. As he spoke, Yang Kai's expression darkened. Since they're not in your sect, what are you trying to achieve by luring me to that place? Ma Tianyuan explained. You misunderstand, junior brother. That madam is indeed a guest in our sect, but it's the three chiefs who received her, so this Ma doesn't know her name. Is there still a need to hide anything at this point? Yang Kai shot him a cold glare, cutting him off. After a moment of silence, Ma Tianyuan sighed and said, Since you've already realized it, this Ma will drop the pretense. That's right. That madam is not in unrivaled guild. Where is she? Yang Kai demanded. Ma Tianyuan shook his head. I don't know. Half a year ago I did meet those three. The three chiefs wanted to invite her to join Unrivaled Guild, but she refused and left with her people. I don't know where she is now. However, I heard that the people from Profound Yang Mountain are trying to hunt them down. Perhaps they've been captured by now. There's also a possibility that they're dead. Profound Yang Mountain? Yang Kai arched his brow. Ma Tianyuan explained. There are three great forces in the shadowless cave heaven. Profound Yang Mountain, Unrivaled Guild, and Twin Spirit Island. Each great force has several sixth-order open heaven realm masters, and we usually don't interfere in each other's affairs. Why do those from Profound Yang Mountain want to hunt them down? Yang Kai asked. Ma Tianyuan replied, There are rarely any newcomers in the shadowless cave heaven. The environment in this place is hostile and it lacks all cultivation resources. Therefore, every newcomer will be asked to join one of the forces and hand over their cultivation resources. Upon hearing his explanation, Yang Kai said, Is this the reason you want to take me to Unrivaled Guild? Ma Tianyuan nodded frankly. That's right. Although you've just entered the fifth order open heaven realm, you must have some resources with you. Once you join Unrivaled Guild, your things will be ours. Your friends are pretty powerful, so they should have some good things on them. Hence, it is expected that they are being targeted by those from Profound Yang Mountain. Furthermore, the second mountain lord is a lascivious man, and that madame is quite alluring. It isn't surprising that he'd lust after her. Profound Yang Mountain, Yang Kai sneered. The proprietress was in the sixth order open heaven realm, and after many years of accumulation she had reached its peak. Basically, the only reason she wasn't breaking through to the seventh order was due to her heart demon oath. On the other hand, Chef and Accountant were newly promoted fifth-order masters. Even though the people from Profound Yang Mountain were powerful, they probably couldn't harm the proprietress. Therefore, she should be safe for now. The most important thing for Yang Kai now was to look for them. Ma Tianyuan went on to explain, Junior brother, I'm inviting you to Unrivaled Guild not entirely for your resources. I'm also doing this for your own good. Yang Kai scoffed. That's a pretty novel statement. Ma Tianyuan said, The shadowless cave heaven is a hostile place. If you don't join one of the three great forces, you won't be able to survive. Yang Kai asked, Why is that? Ma Tianyuan shook his head, apparently not wanting to explain. You'll find out what I mean after you stay here for some time. If you don't believe me, you can ask them whether this Ma is lying. The fourth order open heaven realm woman sighed and said, Senior brother Ma is right. If you don't join one of the three great forces, you'll probably lose your life within a few years. This mistress suffered a setback when she fell into the shadowless cave heaven back then. It took me a long time before I recovered. Upon hearing that, Yang Kai snorted. Although the woman appeared sincere and didn't seem to be lying, these three were from the same sect in the end. There was no guarantee that they hadn't come up with a fabricated story beforehand, so Yang Kai wouldn't readily believe her. Ma Tianyuan continued trying to persuade him. In comparison, joining Unrivaled Guild is the best option because you only have to contribute 60% of your resources, meaning you get to keep 40%. If you join Profound Yang Mountain or Twin Spirit Island, you'll have to give up 70 to 80%. Yang Kai shook his head. I'm not interested in joining your Unrivaled Guild. The only reason I've come all the way here is to look for my friends. Ma Tianyuan said grimly. What's the point of you being obstinate, junior brother? You've just broken through, and your aura isn't even stable yet, so this Ma doesn't want to make a move on you. Therefore, you'd better comply. Yang Kai shot him a glance. What if I say no? After a sigh, Ma Tianyuan said, resources are scarce in this damned place. In order to cultivate, I have no choice but to offend you even if you say no. Don't worry, junior brother. This Ma isn't a ruthless person. As long as you're not too stubborn, I won't kill you. Yang Kai chuckled. I will spare your life as thanks for your consideration. Ma Tianyuan's expression darkened. It seems that you won't cry until you see your coffin. He waved his hand and bellowed. Make your move then. As soon as he finished his words, he pushed his hand out at Yang Kai. A thick world force blasted out from his palm, as though the pressure of an entire world descended upon the latter. Meanwhile, the Fourth Order Open Heaven Realm woman and the Third Order Open Heaven Realm young man used their secret techniques at the same time and attacked Yang Kai. It was apparent that Ma Tianyuan didn't have the intention of killing Yang Kai. Otherwise, he could have directly summoned his artifact. He was originally a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master, but due to some unfortunate events in the Shadowless Cave Heaven, his cultivation regressed to the Fifth Order. Despite that, he was still one of the top cultivators in the same order. Faced with a newly promoted Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master like Yang Kai, he didn't need to go all out. There was a stark difference between the amount of time they had spent accumulating strength, so their heritages were naturally dissimilar. Confronted by three powerful Open Heaven Masters, Yang Kai would have fled in the past. Although he had killed a number of low-rank Open Heaven Masters, he had to exert all his strength and resort to his divine manifestation Golden Crow cast the sun each time he did so, to say nothing of the fact that he was faced with three Open Heaven Realm Masters at this moment, one of them in the Fifth Order. However, things were different now. Presently, he was also a Fifth Order Open Heaven Masters, but he was different from others in this realm. After his small universe formed in his body, he also merged it with his small sealed world. The small sealed world had devoured a lot of the fragments from the Blood Monster Cave Heaven and digested that heritage. In other words, some of the heritage from the Blood Monster Cave Heaven had turned into the capital of Yang Kai's small universe. Furthermore, Yang Kai wanted to test the limits of his new strength. Therefore, instead of fearing these three, Yang Kai's fighting spirit had been ignited as his eyes turned fervent. Assuming a combat stance, his small universe began exuding world force, and with a wave of his arm, two moon blades shot out. Both gigantic moon blades contained a rich world force as they clashed with the Fourth Order Open Heaven Realm woman and the Third Order Open Heaven Realm young man. At that instant, two people were heard screaming as the woman and the young man were sent flying away while spraying blood. The woman was in a better condition as only her clothes were cut open, revealing a patch of her fair skin. On the other hand, the young man was severely injured as he was almost cut in two. However, this kind of injury wasn't lethal to an Open Heaven Realm Master, so he just needed some time to recuperate. Yang Kai easily broke through their blockade with a wave of his hand. Ma Tianyuan was stunned as he hadn't expected Yang Kai to still be capable of dispatching his subordinates under his pressure. At that moment, he felt both ashamed and furious as the world force on his palm thickened. After turning around, Yang Kai pushed out his palm. Following a loud boom, both of them staggered backwards. It wasn't until they moved backwards for nearly 300 meters that they managed to stabilize themselves. Upon trading moves, they realized that they were equally matched. Across from Yang Kai, Ma Tianyuan narrowed his eyes and exclaimed, "How is that possible? Was the person before his eyes really a new Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master?" When their palms came into contact earlier, Ma Tianyuan could feel that the other party's world force was just as rich and powerful as his, and the outcome of the exchange proved that. But how could that be? He had fallen from the Sixth Order to the Fifth Order, so throughout the entire 3,000 worlds, there shouldn't be anyone in the Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm that was a match for him. However, the young man before his eyes was. "Did you really just break through to the Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm?" Ma Tianyuan asked in horror and disbelief. Indeed. Yang Kai took a deep breath as he was drowned in an indescribable feeling of joy. Was this the power of the Open Heaven Realm? He felt as if he could draw on an infinite power from his small universe. It was as though he was able to tear the world apart simply by raising his hand. Meanwhile, Ma Tianyuan was still in disbelief. Nevertheless, Yang Kai's aura fluctuated conspicuously, so it was apparent that he had indeed just achieved an ascension, otherwise he would be able to control his own aura. He was already so powerful just after breaking through, so what heights would he achieve in the future if he was given enough time? The notion terrified Ma Tianyuan. How can someone so extraordinary exist in this world? You haven't fully used your power, right? Yang Kai grinned at him. While Ma Tianyuan sported a solemn expression, Yang Kai went on to say, "What a coincidence. I haven't fully used all my strength either. You should probably stop holding back. Otherwise, you might get hurt." Upon finishing his words, Yang Kai shot forward and directly appeared in front of Ma Tianyuan. The next moment, Ma Tianyuan felt an immense world force pressing against him, and when he lifted his gaze, he saw a palm flying at his chest. An infuriated Ma Tianyuan roared and no longer dared to hold back, fully mobilizing the strength of his small universe, pouring out as much world force as he could. Hong hong hong. Explosive sounds were heard as the surrounding space shook. Immense world force permeated the region as two figures clashed, stirring up a great storm. Sometimes they met in the sky, sometimes on the ground. Mountains collapsed around them as fissures opened in the ground. Wonderful! Wonderful! Yang Kai's expression was like that of a madman as he cried out in excitement. He thrust out his palms in quick succession in order to vent the joy he felt in his heart. Ma Tianyuan was shocked by how crazy Yang Kai appeared, thinking that the young man was some kind of battle maniac who only wished to fight until one of them died. At this moment, he was caught in a dilemma. Faced with the storm of attacks, he had no choice but to fight back with everything he had or he would be seriously wounded. After trading more than 100 moves, Ma Tianyuan felt his small universe begin to shake. Meanwhile, the world force coming from the other party increasingly thickened with every move, like there wasn't an upper limit to his output. Flabbergasted, Ma Tianyuan didn't dare to hold back anything. He began using his secret techniques and even summoned his fifth-order artifact. Despite that, he realized that he was still no match for the other party. Is this guy really human? A horrified Ma Tianyuan speculated that Yang Kai wasn't a newly promoted Fifth-Order Open Heaven Realm Master at all. He had never seen any new Fifth-Order Master who possessed such an immense power. This young man must have spent hundreds, if not 1,000 years of accumulation in his current order. The aura he exposed must have just been a camouflage. What a devious man! Although Ma Tianyuan was utterly vexed, he had to admit that his opponent was truly incredible. Despite the fact that he had fallen from the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm, he had the confidence to defeat or at least match anyone in the Fifth Order. However, not only had he come across such an opponent on this day, but he was even at a disadvantage. This had never happened to him before. "Stop!" Ma Tianyuan bellowed after trading one more move with his opponent. Due to the scarcity of resources in the shadowless cave heaven, unnecessary fights were pointless as it would only increase one's consumption of power. When the people in this place came across one another, they wouldn't make a move if there wasn't a need for it. Therefore, upon realizing that Yang Kai was so powerful, Ma Tianyuan decided to stop fighting. However, Yang Kai ignored him. It was the first time he bumped into an opponent in the same order since he broke through to the Fifth Order Open Heaven realm, which was why he wanted to test out his power. In fact, he hadn't used any secret techniques after his initial 2 Moonblades and had merely been drawing out the power of his small universe to battle against his opponent. He wanted to make use of this battle to familiarize himself with his newfound strength. While they were locked in an intense battle, the woman and young man watched in horror from the side. They were respectively in the 4th and 3rd order, but they were easily defeated by their opponent in the opening moments of the battle. Furthermore, they were totally powerless to intervene in the current fight. Such a fierce battle seemed to have surpassed the Fifth Order Open Heaven realm. Perhaps it wasn't far from a battle between Sixth Order Masters. All of a sudden, the woman sported a solemn expression and scanned her surroundings. Then she yelled at Ma Tianyuan. "The wind is coming, senior brother Ma." Ma Tianyuan, who was already exhausted from dealing with Yang Kai, appeared horrified upon hearing that. Hurriedly, he made a feint in an attempt to withdraw from the battlefield. Certainly, Yang Kai wouldn't grant his wish. Such an intense battle was able to help him rapidly stabilize his cultivation, which was greatly beneficial to him. Upon seeing that Yang Kai was relentless, a shocked and furious Ma Tianyuan bellowed, "The wind is coming. Stop right now." A puzzled Yang Kai asked, "What wind?" Judging from Ma Tianyuan's tone and the woman's expression, Yang Kai reckoned that this wind must be unusual. That was because the three of them sported terrified expressions, as though they were truly afraid of what was coming. However, Yang Kai was a newcomer to the shadowless cave heaven, so he had no idea what this wind was. Ma Tianyuan was resentful of him, so he wasn't willing to explain anything to him and simply said through clenched teeth, "You'll soon experience what kind of wind it is." After he finished his words, the artifact in his hand suddenly shone brightly. As he infused all of his power into the artifact, he attempted to smash it down on Yang Kai's head. There was no doubt that Ma Tianyuan had exerted all of his force with this attack, so Yang Kai wouldn't dare to meet it head-on and quickly dodged to the side. Seizing the chance, Ma Tianyuan leaped away and yelled, "Run!" Following this, he rushed in a particular direction. The woman took a long glance at Yang Kai before she supported the young man's weight and fled in the same direction. Yang Kai frowned and looked at their retreating figures without any intention to pursue them. Then he looked down at his hands and slowly balled up his fists. If he had this kind of power back then, he wouldn't have to hide and only make use of 9 heavenly layers grand array to fend off his enemies, which was all he could do when the 100 Sex Alliance attacked Voidland. If he had this kind of power at that time, he wouldn't have been powerless to counterattack when he was besieged by Shen Liang and Zhang Yunshan from Heavenly Sword Union just outside of Void territory. Presently, he finally had power of his own. In the 3,000 worlds, a person would never be regarded as important if they weren't even an Open Heaven Realm master. The starting point of the Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm was a letdown, as he had spent many years trying to directly become a high-rank Open Heaven Realm master. However, instead of endlessly waiting for a dream that might not even come true, the power in his hands now was far more real. Therefore, Yang Kai didn't regret the decision he had made. If the battle earlier went on, Yang Kai had the confidence to kill Ma Tianyuan even though he would be slightly injured as a cost. Nevertheless, there was no blood feud between them, so it wasn't necessary for Yang Kai to be so merciless. However, after the battle, he had a more direct understanding of his current strength. Just then, he felt a breeze whisking across his face like an invisible hand fiddling with his hair. Wind was indeed blowing. Yang Kai carefully inspected the wind but didn't find anything strange about it. So he wondered why Ma Tianyuan and the others appeared terrified just now. At the mention of the wind, all of their expressions changed drastically, and Ma Tianyuan had chosen to trade injuries with him in order to create an opening to withdraw. As Yang Kai shook his head, he identified a direction and stepped forward. Ma Tianyuan had met the proprietress and the others, but he had no idea where they were now. On the other hand, the people from Profound Yang Mountain were hunting them down. Yang Kai had a feeling that he could find some clues by heading to Profound Yang Mountain and asking them about it. Nevertheless, he had no idea where Profound Yang Mountain was. At that moment, he regretted that he hadn't asked Ma Tianyuan and the others about its location first. The wind was rapidly intensifying. It was still a breeze just a moment ago, but now, a gale lifted all the sand into the air, which made it impossible for Yang Kai to see clearly. It was then he realized why the shadowless cave heaven was so desolate. Given such a hostile environment, it would be strange if this place was fertile. It wouldn't have mattered if it was just a regular storm, but the problem was that the wind was extremely strange, as it was able to sneak into a person's flesh, which made him feel an excruciating pain all over his body, as though he had been repeatedly cut with countless knives. Besides that, the wind could even penetrate his small universe. It was only as Yang Kai checked on his small universe that his expression changed, as he realized that the wind had caused the place to descend into chaos. Even the foundation of his small universe was being damaged by this gale. At that instant, he was dumbfounded, as he couldn't believe there was such horrifying wind in this world. Then, he recalled that the Fourth Order Open Heaven Realm woman had mentioned that Ma Tianyuan was originally a Sixth Order master, but due to some unfortunate events, he regressed to the Fifth Order. It seemed that the incidents must have something to do with this strange wind. Not only was this wind excruciatingly painful, but it was also able to grind down an Open Heaven Realm master's small universe, draining their world force and damaging their foundation. It wouldn't matter if this only happened once or twice, but if a person had to endure this repeatedly, the heritage of their small universe would be permanently weakened and their order would drop. That should be how Ma Tianyuan fell to the fifth order from the sixth order. Moreover, this was just the beginning. As time passed, the gale intensified to the point where Yang Kai wouldn't dare to be negligent. Quickly summoning his azure dragon spear, he dug a deep hole in an attempt to seek refuge underground. However, it was futile. Even though he dove several thousand meters below the surface, the wind seemed almost immaterial and penetrated the earth, infiltrating his small universe in the process. It seemed that there was nowhere in the shadowless cave heaven that was safe from this wind. Of course, there must be places in the shadowless cave heaven where one could evade the wind. Otherwise, all the open heaven realm masters in this place would have been killed following the collapse of their small universes. At the very least, the places where the three great forces were based must be safe zones. The gale didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. Even though Yang Kai was trying his best to resist underground, his efforts proved useless. He could only bear this unspeakable pain while praying that the eerie wind would soon pass. The wind disappeared as abruptly as it came, vanishing an hour later. When Yang Kai climbed out of the hole he had dug, he was completely battered. Not only was his hair a mess, but his skin was also covered in cuts. These flesh wounds didn't matter as he could recover quickly given the resilience of his physique. However, the loss of heritage in his small universe pained his heart. The environment in the small universe didn't change as the sun and the moon still moved in a cyclical manner. Nevertheless, Yang Kai could detect that the heritage in his small universe had been reduced by about 10%. In other words, if he came across the same kind of wind 10 times, his small universe would destabilize and collapse, killing him. The immense loss pained him more than the injuries on his body. It would take him a very long time before he could restore this 10%. In other words, the gale had wiped away years of hard cultivation. What was that wind? Why was it so strange? After stuffing a handful of open heaven pills into his mouth, Yang Kai carefully examined his small universe. It was the first time he refined open heaven pills since he ascended to the open heaven realm. As the pills dissolved in his stomach, the medicinal efficacies streamed into all his organs and turned into world force, which was used to replenish the heritage of his small universe. A handful of pills were fully refined after just a few breaths, which astounded Yang Kai. It was no wonder that open heaven realm masters required a lot of cultivation resources. Given this rate, he was able to refine more than 10,000 open heaven pills in a day, several 100,000 pills in a month, and 3 to 4 million pills in a year. The calculation made was based on the fact that he was in the fifth order open heaven realm. How many pills would he need when he ascended to the sixth order or the seventh order? How long would it take before he could achieve an ascension if he merely relied on refining open heaven pills? How many pills would be used in the process? Yang Kai didn't dare to keep thinking about it as that number must be astronomical. Yang Kai initially thought that the open heaven pills he had accumulated in Voidland were sufficient, but now it seemed that he was very wrong. After all, when the great emperors and the cultivators from the star boundary ascended to the open heaven realm, they would need massive amounts of open heaven pills to keep cultivating. It was no wonder that open heaven realm masters had a thirst for cultivation resources, as it was just too slow refining open heaven pills. It would be much faster to refine cultivation resources of different orders, but that would require a lot of money as well. However, if a person was wealthy, they probably wouldn't mind this. In comparison, it was much better to strengthen the heritage of one's small universe by refining cultivation resources than open heaven pills. Yang Kai refined open heaven pills while examining his small universe. The eerie gale had caused his small universe to descend into chaos. All of a sudden he became startled for a moment before he zoomed in on a particular place in his small universe. That was the place where the manifestation of his towering evergreen divine manifestation was located. It was a gigantic ancient tree. The area around the gargantuan tree that was covered by the tree crown was totally undamaged. Yang Kai couldn't see any traces left behind by the gale. It was as though the eerie wind was blocked by something around this area. Yang Kai frowned and carefully examined other areas in his small universe. He could confirm that all other places were damaged by the wind except for this place. That discovery made his gaze brighten as he thought that his towering evergreen might be able to fend off the effects of the wind, which was why this area was completely undamaged. Unfortunately, he didn't pay attention to this area when the gale was torturing him. Otherwise, he could have intently observed it. He could only wait for the wind to strike again before he could test his speculation. If his theory was correct, he would have a way to protect himself in the shadowless cave heaven. At the very least, he didn't have to worry about his small universe being damaged when the wind struck. After pulling himself together, Xianxia set off. He had no idea where Profound Yang Mountain was, but he reckoned that he would find out about it if he came across others. Ma Tianyuan had said that there were 3 main great forces in the shadowless cave heaven, and all cultivators belonged to one of them. That was because a cultivator wouldn't be able to survive if he or she refused to join one of the great forces. Perhaps everyone had gone into hiding due to the wind just now, because as Xianxia moved forward, he didn't bump into anyone. Half a day later, he finally saw 2 figures passing by from the corner of his eye. Hurriedly, Xianxia charged forward and raced after them. When the 2 people detected Xianxia's presence, they immediately stopped in their tracks and turned around with vigilance, preparing for a fight. Xianxia landed on a spot in front of them and sized them up before discovering that both of them were in the 4th Order Open Heaven realm. One of them looked rough while the other was tall. As soon as they sensed Xianxia's 5th Order Open Heaven realm aura, they put up their guard and the rough-looking man bellowed, "Who are you? Why did you run after us? Don't panic. I don't have any ill intentions. I just want to ask for directions." Xianxia cupped his fist with a smile. The 2 of them traded glances. Then the rough-looking man asked with an awkward expression, "Where do you want to go?" Xianxia asked, "Where is Profound Yang Mountain?" The rough-looking man appeared to be in disbelief. "You don't know where Profound Yang Mountain is?" The other man seemed cleverer as he figured out something and secretly spoke to his companion. It was only then that the rough-looking man realized something and asked, "Have you just arrived in the shadowless cave heaven, senior brother?" Only newcomers would be clueless about the location of Profound Yang Mountain. "That's right." Xianxia nodded. "I accidentally fell into this place and heard that there are 3 great forces. There's no doubt that Profound Yang Mountain is the strongest, so I'd like to join it, but I don't know where it's located. That's why I want to ask you about it." "I'm sorry if I've offended you in any way." Upon hearing that, the rough-looking man guffawed. I see. I thought you were going to rob us." "You're right. Of the 3 great forces in the shadowless cave heaven, Profound Yang Mountain is the best. We have 4 great mountain lords, all of whom are 6th Order Open Heaven realm masters. The first mountain lord is even just 1 step away from the 7th Order Open Heaven realm. Unrivaled Guild only has 3 6th Orders, while Twin Spirit Island has 2. They're not even worth comparing to our Profound Yang Mountain." Xianxia's gaze brightened when he heard that. "Are you 2 from Profound Yang Mountain?" He had never expected that the first people he bumped into would be from Profound Yang Mountain. After giving it a thought, though, he realized that it wasn't so surprising. There were only 3 great forces in the shadowless cave heaven. Since he had met the people from Unrivaled Guild, it was expected that he'd also chance upon people from Profound Yang Mountain. The rough-looking man sported a modest smile. "That's right." An elated Xianxia said, "What a coincidence. Would it be all right for you to lead me to Profound Yang Mountain?" "Of course. If it's not convenient for you, you can just tell me the directions and I'll go over there myself." The rough-looking man exchanged glances with his companion and secretly communicated with him before nodding. "We don't have any important tasks to attend to anyway. Since senior brother is willing to join Profound Yang Mountain, I believe that the mountain lords will welcome you. We'll lead you to the headquarters now." A 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Master was considered fairly powerful in the shadowless cave heaven, so any great force would welcome him. Moreover, a newcomer would have to hand over a large portion of his resources. When that happened, they would get some rewards for bringing Xianxia to the sect. That was also the reason Ma Tianyuan wanted to lure Xianxia to Unrivaled Guild. "Many thanks." Xianxia cupped his fists with gratitude. The rough-looking man laughed and said, "Don't mention it, senior brother. If you join Profound Yang Mountain, we'll be one family. Both of us are weak, so you have to take care of us in the future." Good. Xianxia replied with a smile. Then, they identified the direction and headed straight to Profound Yang Mountain. As a 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Master, Xianxia seemed pretty easygoing, so the 2 men wanted to befriend him. Therefore, they had a pleasant chat on the way to their destination. The 2 of them were biological brothers whose surname was Wei. As they spoke, they implicitly asked about Xianxia's background. Xianxia was being frank as he mentioned that he was from Voidland. While treasure hunting in the Shattered Heaven, he accidentally fell into the Shadowless Cave Heaven. Voidland was a very new great force, while these people had lived in the Shadowless Cave Heaven for years, so they knew nothing about the place Xianxia was from. As such, they were unable to figure out whether Xianxia was speaking the truth. However, regardless of one's background, it was useless in the Shadowless Cave Heaven. There was once a disciple from one of the cave heavens who fell into this place and thought himself superior to others, but he ended up in a miserable state. Perhaps he was secretly killed by one of the top cultivators here. Xianxia's aura suggested that he was a fifth-order open heaven realm master, while the Wei brothers were only in the fourth order, which was why they were polite to him. There came a moment when Xianxia thought that it was the right time to ask about the wind. By the way, I came across a strange gale in this damned place half a day ago. What was that? Why was I still unable to avoid it, even though I dove several thousand meters below ground? At the mention of the eerie wind, the Wei brothers couldn't help but shudder. The older brother Wei gazed at him with an awkward expression and asked, "You snuck into the ground in order to avoid the wind, senior brother Yang?" "Yes." The Wei brothers exchanged glances and seemed to take a stroll down memory lane. Then, the older brother Wei burst into laughter. "That was what we did in the past, but it was totally useless. The wind is unavoidable. Not only can it reach underground, but it also blows into our small universes. We suffered immense losses because of that." Xianxia repeatedly nodded. "That was what happened to me. My small universe is in a mess now." The younger brother Wei added, "Since you're a newcomer, it's expected that you know nothing about it. We call that strange wind shadowless astral wind, but no one knows what it actually is. The wind is able to penetrate essentially any kind of barrier to reach every point in the Shadowless Cave Heaven. Only a few special spots are safe from it. You can't avoid the wind anywhere else." The older brother Wei said, "These places are the headquarters of the three great forces in the Shadowless Cave Heaven. The location of Profound Yang Mountain is the biggest one. Whenever the shadowless astral wind comes, all of us have to avoid it. Otherwise, we suffer big losses." Upon that realization, Xianxia nodded. "It's no wonder that the person I came across earlier told me that we're unable to survive in the Shadowless Cave Heaven if we don't join one of the three great forces." The older brother Wei nodded repeatedly. "True. Without shelter, a person will lose all the heritage in his or her small universe due to the wind, and once their small universe collapses, they'll die." A worried Xianxia asked, "Are only the headquarters of the three great forces safe from the wind in the Shadowless Cave Heaven? In that case, the proprietress and the others were probably in a terrible state right now. It had been 1 year since they fell into the Shadowless Cave Heaven, so they must have experienced the astral wind many times, which would certainly have a negative impact on their small universes." The younger brother Wei shook his head. "Not exactly. There are some smaller places where one can take refuge from the wind, but they can't accommodate a lot of people." The older brother Wei followed up, "To be honest with you, even the headquarters of the three great forces are not completely immune to the shadowless astral wind. It's just that the impact is less severe when we hide inside those places. Even though there are other shelters, none of them are as good as the headquarters of the three great forces." To the side, the younger brother Wei nodded in agreement. Xianxia arched his brow. "It seems that we're really unable to survive if we don't join one of the three great forces." "That's right." Xianxia looked away and asked, "Has no one survived over the years while not being in one of the three great forces?" "There are none. You had a taste of shadowless astral wind earlier, senior brother Yang. Even though you're a fifth-order open heaven realm master, how many times do you think you can endure it?" The younger brother Wei muttered, "I remember that there are 3 people who are outside of the 3 great forces now. I wonder how they're doing." 3 people. Xianxia appeared shocked. "Who are they? Why are they not part of the 3 great forces?" The younger brother Wei took a glance at his older brother, not knowing whether he should talk about it. After a moment of hesitation, the older brother Wei reasoned, "Senior brother Yang is going to join Profound Yang Mountain, so there's no reason we can't tell him." It was then the younger brother Wei continued, "Senior brother Yang, you said you want to join Profound Yang Mountain. But do you know our rules? Please tell me about them." If you join Profound Yang Mountain, you can stay in the Great Force when the wind comes to prevent being harmed. However, cultivation resources in the shadowless cave heaven are very scarce. So every newcomer has to hand over 80% of their cultivation resources upon joining. I did hear something like that. Yang Kai nodded. It was then the younger brother Wei breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that other great forces must have attempted to lure Yang Kai to join them, but he had turned them down. It wasn't until he had a taste of shadowless astral wind that he decided to join Profound Yang Mountain. In fact, the same thing happened to the Wei brothers in the past. After all, no one was willing to hand over a large part of their own resources to someone else. However, once a newcomer had a taste of the shadowless astral wind, they would be eager to join one of the three great forces without anyone luring them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to survive in the shadowless cave heaven. As the Wei brothers recalled the past, they put on bitter smiles. After pulling himself together, the younger brother Wei continued. There were 2 men and 1 woman. All of them are fairly powerful. The woman was in the 6th order open heaven realm, while the men were in the 5th order. When they arrived in the shadowless cave heaven, they happened to land on a place just outside of Profound Yang Mountain. The mountain lords noticed them and attempted to make them join our great force. The 2nd mountain lord even promised the woman that she would become the 5th mountain lord. However, she turned down the offer. The 5th mountain lord? Why did the woman turn down such a good offer? Yang Kai asked in puzzlement. The younger brother Wei explained with a helpless smile. In fact, our 2nd mountain lord has a problem. It's that he's very lascivious. The woman is alluring, and she's as powerful as the 2nd mountain lord. Therefore, he declared that the woman needed to be his partner before she could become the 5th mountain lord in Profound Yang Mountain. Perhaps the woman was from a powerful background, so she was rather hot-tempered. After an argument, she got into a fight with the 2nd mountain lord. What happened next? Yang Kai asked. Although the woman was powerful, she was unable to fight against so many people on her own. There are 4 6th order open heaven realm masters in Profound Yang Mountain, so it was expected that she was no match for them. The mountain lords joined forces and injured her, but she managed to flee in the end. The 2nd mountain lord was so furious that he hunted them down for a while, but to no avail. Even though Yang Kai was furious, he pretended to be nonchalant. The older brother Wei continued, they won't let that woman off. Although she was powerful, the mountain lords could have prevented her from fleeing if they went all out. However, the shadowless cave heaven is different from the outside world as resources are scarce here. No one is willing to make a move unless it's absolutely necessary. That's because fighting consumes a lot of power. If the mountain lords wanted to make the woman stay at that time, they would have had to pay a hefty price. That was why they let her go. The younger brother Wei nodded his head. A long time has passed since that incident. I guess the 2nd mountain lord is about to make a move. Even if those 3 were able to find a shelter, their strength must have been weakened by now as they had to constantly resist the shadowless astral wind. Certainly, the 2nd mountain lord will be able to easily defeat them now. Yang Kai asked, do you know where the 3 of them are now? The older brother Wei gave him a weird look. Why are you asking this question, senior brother Yang? Yang Kai put on a faint smile. Just curious. The unsuspecting older brother Wei shook his head and replied, we don't know where they are now, but the 2nd mountain lord should be aware of it. Then he pointed at the front. Profound Yang Mountain is over there. It's the 2nd mountain lord who is in charge this month, so I'll bring you to meet him first. After you join Profound Yang Mountain, we can have a proper chat. Many thanks. Yang Kai nodded. There were more than 10 mountains in Profound Yang Mountain. Looking from afar, one could see many palaces scattered around the mountains, and quite a number of cultivators were seen moving about. The people who could enter the shadowless cave heaven were all open heaven realm masters. On the way to their destination, some people would greet the Wei brothers and inquire about Yang Kai's background. The Wei brothers were completely honest with them, and upon hearing their explanation, these people appeared envious. That was because Yang Kai was brought to Profound Yang Mountain by the Wei brothers. After he handed over 80% of his resources, the Wei brothers would also get a handsome reward. Certainly, these people were envious of them for getting such benefits. Soon, they reached a peak where there was a majestic grand hall. One could even hear some flirtatious and playful voices coming from inside. Upon reaching the entrance, one of the Wei brothers spoke up, "Please wait for me here, senior brother Yang. I'll inform the second mountain lord about your visit." Yang Kai nodded and waited patiently. The older brother Wei entered the grand hall, and just a moment later, he stepped out and said to Yang Kai, "The second mountain lord is ready to meet you. Please come with me, senior brother Yang." As soon as Yang Kai followed the Wei brothers into the grand hall, he caught a whiff of a pleasant fragrance and felt a rather decadent aura. Looking up, he saw a lot of women's clothes scattered around on the ground that also included some undergarments. At the other end of the grand hall, there was a rather soft-looking man lying on a huge chair, surrounded by 7 or 8 women in revealing clothes. These women were wearing different styles of clothing, and they were each beautiful in their own unique way. There was a woman who squatted in front of him and helped him massage his calves. There was also a woman who let the man lie on her thighs and rubbed his temples. Another woman was seen sipping some wine into her mouth and then passing it into the man's mouth. The sight was extremely licentious. These women were barely covered as a large part of their skin was exposed. When the Wei brothers and Yang Kai stepped into the place, the women turned to look at them with their alluring eyes. Be it Ma Tianyuan or the Wei brothers, they all said that the second mountain lord from profound Yang Mountain was a lascivious man. It seemed that it was indeed the case. The women around him were all open heaven realm masters ranging from the 3rd order to the 5th order. After the Wei brothers entered the grand hall, they hung their heads low and stared at their feet while Yang Kai looked fixedly at the man. As their eyes met, the soft-looking man curved his lips into a wicked smile. While he remained lying on the chair, he wandered his hand around one of the women, which caused her to moan incessantly. "You want to join profound Yang Mountain?" The man asked impassively. "Are you the second mountain lord of profound Yang Mountain?" Yang Kai questioned him instead. The man put on a faint smile. This king is second mountain lord of profound Yang Mountain, Yunfei Bai. Half a year ago, a woman and 2 men arrived at this place. Were you the one who injured that woman? Yang Kai asked. Yunfei Bai narrowed his eyes and shot Yang Kai a meaningful glance. To the side, the Wei brothers realized that something was off as they turned to gaze at Yang Kai. The older brother Wei pulled Yang Kai's sleeve and secretly spoke to him. "Why are you asking this question, senior brother Yang?" An unfazed Yang Kai stared fixedly at Yunfei Bai. "Is it true?" Yunfei Bai retracted his hand and slowly sat up before glaring at the Wei brothers. Faced with the stern stare, the brothers were immediately drenched in cold sweat as they felt a crawling sensation on their scalps. Then Yunfei Bai turned to look at Yang Kai and replied smilingly, "She was hurt by this king. She should feel honored that I was interested in her, but she couldn't appreciate my kindness. This king had no choice but to harm her a little. What's wrong? Do you know her?" "Yes." Yang Kai nodded. "She's my proprietress." Yunfei Bai said, "In that case, you're not here to join profound Yang Mountain. What's the purpose of your visit?" Yang Kai flashed a grin at him. "Since you've hurt proprietress, I'm here to return the favor." Yunfei Bai became startled for a moment before he pressed his palms together and guffawed. "You? Retaliate against me?" Then he sized Yang Kai up. "You've just entered the 5th order, right? Why are you making a scene here in profound Yang Mountain instead of strengthening your own cultivation? Are you sick of living?" He paused for a moment. "Good. This king was preparing to deal with that slut in a few days. Since you've come all the way here, I'll capture you and then look for her. I believe that she's important to you, which is why you're so concerned about her. You should make a good bargaining chip. You want to capture me? Let's see if you're capable of doing that." As soon as Yang Kai finished speaking, he unleashed his 5th order open heaven realm aura and like a flood dragon leaving the ocean, he charged at Yunfei Bai. The Wei brothers beside him were forced to stagger backwards from the impact, while Yunfei Bai remained seated while giving Yang Kai a disdainful look. "You dare!" One of the women who leaned against the man yelled and raised her hand before pushing her palm towards Yang Kai. The woman was a fairly powerful cultivator in the 5th order open heaven realm. Clad in very thin clothing, her precious places were exposed while she made a move. Any man who saw this would feel their blood boiling. Scram! Yang Kai bellowed and pushed out his fist. Following a loud boom, the woman shrieked and sprayed out a mouthful of blood while she was sent flying away. Her tender body crashed into the wall and then fell into the debris. Yunfei Bai's expression changed drastically as he stood straight up and roared, "Impudence! He didn't make a move just now because he didn't think there was a need to. There was no way a newly promoted Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master could possess much strength, so the women around him should be able to deal with him. However, it never crossed Yunfei Bai's mind that his strongest woman would be sent flying after just one exchange of blows. The other women were dumbfounded, but they soon came to their senses and shouted as they used their secret techniques on Yang Kai. These women were not just Yunfei Bai's playthings. After all, they were all Open Heaven Realm Masters who were strong in their own right, though their orders varied quite a bit. Presently, they were making a move at the same time, so the sight was both alluring and imposing. An unafraid Yang Kai threw out his fists in quick succession, unleashing a barrage of fist shadows as he attacked the women in all directions. Explosive sounds were continuously heard as his world force blew out the surrounding walls. These women clad in skimpy outfits were all sent flying in different directions. Amidst the weltering dust, Yang Kai shot into the sky and looked around before knitting his brows. So weak. None of them can fight. Besides the first woman who traded moves with him, there was also another Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master among these women, while the rest were Third and Fourth Order. However, these two Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters were totally incomparable to Ma Tianyuan. After the battle against Ma Tianyuan, Yang Kai had a better understanding of his own strength. He thought that all Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters would be about as strong as Ma Tianyuan. But after this battle, he realized that he had overestimated others while underestimating himself. After giving it a thought, he realized that it wasn't surprising. Ma Tianyuan fell from the Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm to his current strength, so he was at the very peak of the Fifth Order. These two women were naturally much weaker than him. The place was a mess, but although the women were injured by Yang Kai, they were still alive. Outside the ruins, the Wei brothers were dumbfounded at the turn of events as they shuddered in fear. "You court death," Yunfei Bai roared. He would be completely humiliated if word got out that his women were hurt in his own room. Initially, he intended to capture Yang Kai and then deal with the woman named Lan Yu Ruo. However, his mind was now filled with murderous intent. As his Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm aura permeated the air, he raised his hand and then brought down his palm. A gigantic green palm was immediately formed above Yang Kai's head, made from the purest world force. The attack was like an entire small universe pressing against Yang Kai. Moreover, it was the small universe of a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master. At that instant, Yang Kai felt tremendously pressured. Although he'd had a good fight with Ma Tianyuan after he had just ascended to the Open Heaven Realm, he hadn't been forced into going all out. However, as he was faced with a furious Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master now, any slight negligence would cost him his life. His fighting spirit had been ignited as he boldly shot into the sky and met the palm head-on. A sense of ruthlessness flashed through Yunfei Bai's eyes as he clenched his fist, whereupon the gigantic palm also closed and turned into a cage as it grasped Yang Kai's small figure. The next instant, however, Yunfei Bai's expression changed drastically. As world force undulated, rays of light shot out in all directions. The gigantic hand exploded as a figure shot out and charged towards Yunfei Bai as swift as lightning. Upon seeing that, Yunfei Bai snorted. Although he didn't seem to be moving, he abruptly appeared in front of Yang Kai. As his clothes flapped in the wind, powerful but inconspicuous attacks bombarded Yang Kai. Every attack contained an extremely horrifying world force. Yang Kai continuously fended off the attacks as his figure shook and stepped backwards upon impact. He reflected as he fought, realizing that a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master was truly powerful. Although he was pretty strong as a Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master, there was still a difference of one order between them. Therefore, there was a clear disparity between their might. Yang Kai knew he had to settle this fight as soon as possible. After all, they were in Profound Yang Mountain where there were 4 Sixth Order Mountain Lords. If the battle dragged on, the other Mountain Lords and the powerful masters from Profound Yang Mountain would take notice of the commotion. By then, Yang Kai would fall into a perilous situation. He wasn't arrogant or ignorant enough to believe he could deal with several Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters all at once. "You're really something, brat." Although Yunfei Bai was incensed, he still couldn't help but praise Yang Kai upon seeing that the latter was able to ward off his attacks. Even though there was only a difference of one order between the fifth order and the sixth order open heaven realm, the disparity in strength was as great as the distance between the heavens and the earth. If Inflate was dealing with any other fifth-order open heaven realm master, he was confident that he would be able to take down the other party in 10 moves. However, Xianxia had already fended off 100 blows and aside from looking a bit awkward was perfectly fine. He couldn't help but wonder whether Xianxia really was a new fifth-order open heaven realm master. Is he just playing the pig? If he isn't a new fifth-order open heaven realm master, what's going on with that unstable aura of his? While Yunfei was still lost in his thoughts, Xianxia, who was forced to continuously step backwards, suddenly stopped in his tracks. At that instant, Yunfei felt his chest tightening as a sense of crisis suddenly befell him. The next moment, Xianxia reached out his hand and summoned a long spear into his grip. The entire world seemed to shake the moment the spear appeared. A mighty dragon roar resounded as a majestic dragon pressure permeated the air. Xianxia's demeanor changed completely as he held the spear in his grip. He let out a breath and wielded the spear. Without any wasted movements or hesitation, he unleashed the full power of his supreme limitless spear technique. Yunfei's expression changed drastically when he saw the spear approaching him. In his eyes, he could see a terrifying great dragon charging at him. As the dragon swam through the air, seemingly determined to swallow him down in one fell swoop. Faced with this terrifying monster, he felt as insignificant as an ant. He immediately bit his tongue to compose himself. Resisting the dragon pressure, Yunfei roared as he summoned a scroll on which some illegible characters were written. Despite that, every stroke of the characters looked like a uniquely shaped sword. The terrifying sword she spread out. After he infused his world force into the scroll, the characters came apart and turned into beams of very pure sword chi. As they slashed across the void, the sounds of breaking through the air were heard. This was a complete humiliation. As a sixth-order open heaven realm master, Yunfei was forced to use his artifact when dealing with a mere fifth-order open heaven realm master. This was totally inconceivable to him. Prior to this, it never crossed his mind that such a formidable fifth-order open heaven realm master existed in this world. Comparing himself, back when he was still a fifth-order open heaven realm master, to this young man, Yunfei felt he wasn't even worthy of carrying the latter's shoes. To the side, the Wei brothers were dumbstruck and shuddered violently. They were not on the battlefield, so they were not able to experience how powerful Xianxia was directly. However, upon seeing that the second mountain lord had summoned his artifact, they knew that the latter had no other means to deal with the opponent. That was why they appeared horrified. Xianxia wielded the Azure Dragon Spear with complete freedom, unrestrained by anything. The spear was like an extension of himself, and he could manipulate it in any way he imagined. The scroll glowed wildly as the beams of sword chi crisscrossed one another. However, they were all warded off by Xianxia. It had been many years since Giant Spirit God Ada had given the spear to Xianxia, and Xianxia had used the Azure Dragon Spear and killed many enemies already. Nevertheless, it wasn't until this moment that he had a real taste of the spear's true might. This was an artifact that only an open heaven realm master could truly wield. Although he was able to bring out a fraction of the spear's power in the past, it was only because he possessed a dragon source. Since he was weak, he was unable to fully display the spear's might. However, this time was different. With the weapon in his hand, Xianxia could clearly feel fluctuations that resembled joy coming from the spear. Holding it, he felt as though he could challenge all 36 cave heavens and 72 paradises alone. Like a thunderstorm, Xianxia repeatedly thrust out his spear in rapid succession. The attacks didn't only contain the power of the Azure Dragon Spear, but also Xianxia's understanding of the Tao of space and Tao of time. In Yunfei's eyes, Xianxia's spear and figure were blurry and elusive, making it almost impossible for him to follow his movements or identify his position. On top of that, his own thoughts seemed to be disturbed, like there was a disconnect between his mind, body, and the surrounding world. The power of the scroll had been fully activated and all the characters had left its surface, transforming into colorful blades of sword chi that repeatedly slashed through the air. A long time seemed to have passed, but it was also as if only an instant had gone by. When Yang Kai's figure completely disappeared from Yun Fei Bai's sight for an instant, and he suddenly felt a tremendous sense of danger engulfing him. As a sixth-order open heaven realm master, he had experienced countless life and death moments. Therefore, he was extremely sensitive to danger, and he was able to react appropriately. All the sword chi returned and formed into a dazzling sword wave in front of him before he pushed it forward. The next moment, Yang Kai abruptly appeared before him, as though he was throwing himself into the sword wave. He didn't seem to have the intention of backing down as his eyes were filled with determination and murderous intent. As Yang Kai stared fixedly at his opponent, he unleashed a grand thrust with his azure dragon spear and bellowed, "Die!" Blood splattered everywhere. Yun Fei Bai's chest had been penetrated by azure dragon spear, while Yang Kai's neck was slashed across by the sword wave. The flesh around the wound rolled up as he was almost decapitated. Upon impact, both of them were forced to step backwards as their blood splattered out. It had to be said that at that moment of crisis, Yun Fei Bai had reacted in the best possible manner. If he hadn't harmed Yang Kai with that sword wave, forcing his spear thrust off course ever so slightly, the attack could have killed him. After they separated, Yang Kai held the spear in one hand while covering the wound on his neck with his other. He seemed determined to continue attacking. However, before he could make a move, he suddenly looked in a particular direction and snorted, "This isn't over. When I see you again, I'll definitely kill you." Upon declaring so, Yang Kai shot away from Profound Yang Mountain. He wanted to kill Yun Fei Bai, but the intense battle just now had alerted the top masters from Profound Yang Mountain, and he could detect that those sixth-order open heaven realm mountain lords were approaching. If he stayed there any longer, he would have been besieged by them. "Kill him for me. Kill him." An extremely pale Yun Fei Bai stomped hard, and his roar reverberated across the entire Profound Yang Mountain. The figures who were coming to Yun Fei Bai immediately turned around and chased after Yang Kai, including the third and fourth mountain lords of Profound Yang Mountain. There was only one person who landed in front of the ruined Grand Hall. It was a fair-skinned and gentle-looking person who looked like an innocent young man. However, the shrewdness behind his eyes suggested that he was older than he appeared. "Head Mountain Lord." The Wei brothers hurriedly lowered their heads. This young-looking man was actually the first mountain lord of Profound Yang Mountain, Wuxia. The four great mountain lords of Profound Yang Mountain were all in the sixth-order open heaven realm, but he was the undisputed leader because he was just one step away from the seventh order. In this regard, the other three mountain lords, as well as the three chiefs of Unrivaled Guild and the two island masters of Twin Spirit Island, were incomparable to him. In the shadowless cave heaven, cultivators were still able to break through to the next realm. However, due to the scarcity of resources and the existence of the shadowless astral wind, cultivators who had fallen into this place considered themselves lucky if they could maintain their current order. No one dared hope to achieve a breakthrough here. It took a substantial amount of resources for a sixth-order open heaven realm master to ascend to the seventh order. Therefore, even though Wuxia had remained in his current order for over 10,000 years, he was still unable to take the leap to the seventh-order open heaven realm. However, everyone believed that if he hadn't fallen into the shadowless cave heaven, he would have reached that realm in the outside world long ago. "Second brother, what happened?" Wuxia looked around and asked. With a pair of eyes that seemed able to spit fire, Yun Fei Bai said through clenched teeth, "I was caught off guard by some brat." Wuxia looked in the direction Yang Kai had left with a slightly furrowed brow. "If I'm not mistaken, that person is only in the fifth-order open heaven realm, right?" Yun Fei Bai flushed and said, "I was just careless." "He's really something as he's able to harm you when he's just a fifth-order open heaven realm master." Wuxia nodded. "Where does he come from?" Yun Fei Bai glared at the Wei brothers. "They have some explaining to do." Wuxia turned to look at the Wei brothers, who turned pale instantly as they were soaked in cold sweat. Not daring to hide anything, they hurriedly narrated their encounter with Yang Kai. Upon hearing that, Wuxia fell into his thoughts for a moment before saying, "He came all the way here for Lan Yurua." Yun Fei Bai was severely injured as his chest had been penetrated by the azure dragon spear, and his clothes were covered in blood. Given the fact that he was a sixth-order open heaven realm master, it would take him 1 to 2 months before he could fully recover. However, he wasn't at risk of losing his life at the very least. While Maozhi spoke to the Wei brothers, he was already seated with his legs crossed and adjusting his breathing to prevent his injury from worsening. The Wei brothers darted their gazes between Yunfei Bai and Maozhi as they were completely apprehensive. Even though they had no idea that Yang Kai was audacious enough to make a scene in profound Yang Mountain, they were the ones who brought him to this place after all. Hence, they could not stay clear of this matter. Now that Yunfei Bai was severely injured, they would probably get some harsh punishments. They couldn't help but secretly curse at Yang Kai for dragging them into this. They felt that they had been unfairly victimized. A while later, two figures descended from the sky. They were the third mountain lord and the fourth mountain lord of profound Yang Mountain. Maozhi turned to look at them, whereupon the third mountain lord Gengqing shook his head. He escaped. Maozhi arched his brow. Oh? He managed to flee with you two personally chasing after him? Wasn't that boy injured by second brother? The fourth mountain lord was the only woman among the four great mountain lords of profound Yang Mountain. Apart from her alluring face and curvy figure, her watery eyes seemed able to suck a man's soul into them at any moment. Upon hearing Maozhi's words, she replied, "That boy seems to be adept in the Tao of space." He teleported away while third brother and I were chasing him, vanishing into thin air. Maozhi's gaze brightened. He's adept in the Tao of space? Gengqing dipped his head. I believe so. Maozhi immediately closed his eyes and scanned his surroundings. A moment later, he nodded. It's true. There are some residual fluctuations of space principles here. No wonder that he had the guts to make a scene in profound Yang Mountain. I heard that masters of the Tao of space are unrivaled when it comes to chasing and escaping. Unless we're able to seal the heavens and lock the earth, we won't be able to restrict his freedom. It seems the rumors are true. After pondering on it for a moment, he went on to say, since that boy has come all the way here for Lan Yurua, he'll definitely look for her. Third brother, fourth sister, please go over and capture that boy. I don't care about the others, but that boy has to be brought back to me alive. Gengqing and the fourth mountain lord Zhou you exchanged glances. Then the former asked doubtfully, it seems that you have a high regard for that boy. Big brother. Maozhi gently rubbed his fingers together and asked, how many years have you been in the shadowless cave heaven, third brother? After giving it a thought, Gengqing replied, I can't remember the exact length of time, but I suppose it's been 3,000 years. What about you? Fourth sister. Zhou Yu replied, I'm sure it's been more than 1,000 years. Then Maozhi took a glance at Yunfei Bai, who was trying to heal his wound, and said, second brother came earlier than you too. He's been around for 6,000 years while I've been stuck in this place for more than 10,000 years. The shadowless cave heaven is neither big nor small. Over the years, we've searched all the places we could, but we're still unable to find an exit. All of them appeared dejected at the mention of this. Besides profound Yang Mountain, those from Unrivaled Guild and Twin Spirit Island had constantly been looking for a way out as well. However, they were unable to find any clue regardless of how hard they tried. It's been so many years. Don't you want to go out and see the outside world again? Do you want to remain stuck in this damned place forever? Gengqing replied, of course we want to leave. Zhou Yu appeared to be in her thoughts. Big brother, you mean? Maozhi nodded. That boy is a master of the Tao of space, so he's much more sensitive to space principle fluctuations than us. Perhaps he'll be able to find the way out. The gazes of Gengqing and Zhou Yu brightened when they heard that. Although they were unable to find the exit after so many years, it didn't mean that the shadowless cave heaven had no exit. It was just that they hadn't found it. If they could make use of this boy who was proficient in the Tao of space, perhaps they would have a pleasant surprise. An excited Gengqing said, don't worry, big brother. Fourth sister and I will call the roll and capture that boy immediately. Just when Maozhi was about to speak, Yunfei Bai suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, wait a moment. Gengqing gazed at him. Is there anything you want to say, second brother? Yunfei Bai said through gritted teeth. Please leave this matter to me, big brother. It's utterly humiliating that I was injured by that brat. If I don't get my revenge, I'll never have a good night's rest again. Upon hearing that, Maozhi frowned. Zhou Yu said, second brother, your wound, how are you going to make a move? Don't forget that Lan Yurua is also a sixth-order open heaven realm master. Although her power might have weakened during this period of time, it's still not easy to deal with her if she's pushed into a corner. Yunfei Bai replied, this kind of injury will heal in 2. No, it'll heal in 1 month. We've been waiting for years. So why can't we wait another month? Then, he gazed at Mao Zhe and sported a solemn expression. Please give me 1 month's time, big brother. Mao Zhe closed his eyes and fell silent. A moment later, he nodded gently and said, since you're so determined, we'll wait for your recovery. Then you'll lead the operation. An ecstatic Yunfei Bai replied, many thanks, big brother. Following that, Mao Zhe moved and abruptly disappeared. Geng Qing and Zhou Ye exchanged glances. Then they told Yunfei Bai to take a rest and dispersed. After the other 3 mountain lords were gone, the women who were injured by Yang Kai earlier appeared and came over to help Yunfei Bai up before they headed to another mountain. The Wei brothers traded glances and shuddered before fleeing from that place, feeling as though they had just escaped from death's door. Meanwhile, a battered figure landed on a barren mountain. He was none other than Yang Kai, who was running for his life just moments before. Yunfei Bai's attack almost beheaded him. The long wound on his neck was hideous, and all his clothes were soaked in blood. However, he had a strong physique, so even as he ran for his life earlier, his wound was starting to heal. The flesh around his wound was seen squirming and reconnecting already. Now, the most important thing for him was to get rid of Yunfei Bai's world force. Otherwise, his wound would never heal. Upon making sure that no one was pursuing him, Yang Kai dug a hole in the mountain and snuck into it. Then he stuffed a handful of pills into his mouth and pushed his world force to suppress and expel the power left behind by Yunfei Bai in his neck wound. Although Yunfei Bai was 1 order above him, his residual power wasn't a living thing. Therefore, it wasn't difficult for Yang Kai to disperse it as he just needed some time. Half a day later, Yang Kai's expression changed as he opened his eyes and released his divine sense. Soon, he realized that there was a woman pacing around outside the barren mountain. Yang Kai initially decided to ignore her. After all, he had to recuperate as soon as possible, but the woman kept pacing around for a long time as though she had discovered something. His heart sank as he had no choice but to leave his hideout. The woman was only in the 4th order open heaven realm, so given Yang Kai's current strength, he could kill her as he pleased. Therefore, even though he was wounded, he wasn't afraid of her. The woman was just looking around when she sensed something and looked up, only to see Yang Kai staring coldly at her. She was shocked as she subconsciously took a few steps back. All of a sudden, something flashed through her eyes as Yang Kai abruptly appeared before her and clenched her neck with his iron-like hand. The force coming from his palm felt as lethal as a python's bite. At that instant, the woman was horrified as she coughed and pleaded with the man with her eyes. Yang Kai stared dispassionately at her for a moment before frowning. You're one of Yunfei Bai's women? The woman looked familiar to Yang Kai. She was one of the women who surrounded Yunfei Bai earlier. If he wasn't mistaken, she was the one who massaged Yunfei Bai's calves. Presently, she was clad only in a thin layer of clothing, leaving her curvy figure faintly visible to the eyes. Moments ago, Yang Kai fought with those women and sent them all flying away, this woman included. The woman wanted to nod, but she was unable to move a muscle, so she could only bat her eyes. How did you find me? Yang Kai asked coldly. He had even shaken off 2 6th order open heaven realm masters. So how did this weak woman find his whereabouts? As he spoke, he slightly loosened his grip. The woman hurriedly explained, I'm sensitive to smells, and Sir's blood is different from others. Yang Kai frowned, not knowing whether he should believe her. As he expanded his divine sense, he realized that there was no one else besides them in this place. He had the intention of killing her, but faced with a much weaker woman who didn't have a blood feud with him, Yang Kai didn't have the heart to cross that line. After glaring for a while, he snorted and released her. Since you're able to find me, why have you come to look for me on your own instead of telling the leaders of Profound Yang Mountain to come here? Aren't you worried that I'll kill you? The woman pressed her lips together. Without replying to him, she fished out a jade slip from her space ring and passed it to him. What is this? The woman didn't explain anything, and upon seeing that Yang Kai wasn't taking it, she gently put the jade slip down on the ground and stepped backwards as she said, I'll owe you a favor if you can kill Yun Fei Bai. Yang Kai furrowed his brows while the woman turned around and left, leaving behind a rather pleasant fragrance in the air. After taking a look at the jade slip, Yang Kai balled up his fist and grasped it in his hand. Upon examining it, he arched his brow. That was because the jade slip contained a detailed map of the shadowless cave heaven and the proprietress location. As he recalled the woman's words before she left, Yang Kai fell into contemplation. It seemed that the woman wasn't willing to become Yun Fei Bai's plaything. She was forced into such a state. Unfortunately, she was too weak to resist. The fact that Yang Kai barged into Profound Yang Mountain and wounded Yun Fei Bai allowed her to see a glimmer of hope. So she came all the way here to look for him and give him some information. After storing the jade slip, Yang Kai turned around and left. He hadn't fully recovered yet and he wasn't certain whether the woman was telling him the truth. It'd be terrible if Yang Kai's opponents found him because she was leading him into a trap. Therefore, he decided to change hiding spots. A while later, he found a cave on another barren mountain and snuck into it to recuperate. The wound on his neck was hideous. However, it was nothing more than a flesh wound after Yun Fei Bai's residual power was expelled, so it wasn't difficult to heal it. Given his intrepid physique, it would only take him 3 to 5 days to recover. A few days later, Yang Kai fished out the jade slip and identified his current position. After going through the information in the jade slip, he turned into a beam of light and headed in a particular direction. Half a day later, he landed on a huge caldera. Looking down, he realized that the caldera was basically bottomless. Horrifying red magma weltered inside the basin while dark smoke was seen billowing from it. There were countless such calderas in the surrounding 1,000 kilometers radius, and from time to time, the magma would burst out and form red rivers. The environment here was more hostile than most places, but according to the information in the jade slip given to Yang Kai by that woman, the proprietress, chef, and accountant were currently hiding here. In the entire shadowless cave heaven, there were only a small number of places that were safe from the shadowless astral wind. Besides the headquarters of the 3 great forces, this caldera was one such place. However, it was less effective compared to the headquarters of the 3 great forces. Yang Kai rubbed his nose as he felt a lump in his throat. The proprietress was a beautiful woman, but she was also a peak 6th order open heaven realm master. In order to look for a cultivation resource for him, she fell into the shadowless cave heaven, and eventually she had to hide in this kind of terrible place. He couldn't help but blame himself. In the past, he was determined to become a high-rank open heaven realm master and didn't listen to anyone's dissuasion. Perhaps he had been too willful back then. When he took a deep breath, the pungent smell seemed to have turned into needles and jabbed into his lungs. Looking down at the caldera, he yelled, "Anyone home?" There was a passageway under the magma that had been set up with a barrier to serve as a shelter. Chef suddenly opened his eyes and listened attentively for a moment before poking Accountant with his elbow. Then, he asked in a small voice, "Do you hear anything?" Accountant opened his listless eyes and shot him a glance. "What do you mean?" Chef scratched his head. "I think I heard Yang Kai's voice." Accountant hurriedly took a glance at the proprietress, which revealed more of the white parts of his eyes, before glaring at Chef. "Stop spouting nonsense. That brat is just an Emperor Realm cultivator. How is he supposed to enter the shadowless cave heaven?" "You must have heard it wrong." Chef nodded. "You're right." "Wait. Listen." Accountant sported an awkward expression because while speaking to Chef, he could indeed hear a familiar voice calling out to them. Due to the weltering magma, the voice was only faintly audible. If Chef hadn't pointed it out, he wouldn't have noticed it. In a nearby spot, the proprietress opened her eyes, which were filled with doubt and puzzlement. A moment later, she became furious and snarled through clenched teeth, "That damn brat." Then she stood straight up, and as the hem of her dress flapped in the air, she shot out of the passageway. After exchanging glances, Chef and Accountant hurriedly followed her. Atop the caldera, Yang Kai had called out to them several times, but no one responded to him. He thought that the woman might have lied to him, as the proprietress and the others might not be hiding in this place. However, there wasn't a need for that woman to take the risk to do such a thing. After all, what if Yang Kai was determined to end her life? Just when he was about to dive into the volcano to have a look, his expression changed as he stared fixedly at the magma. A moment later, the magma formed into a huge swirl, as though it had been stirred by an invisible force. Just then, a figure shot out through the center of the swirl. Her snowy white imperial dress was conspicuous in this hostile red and black environment. Like a lotus on a snowy mountain, she was pure and immaculate. Before she even arrived, her familiar aura came right at Xianxia, who smiled like a fool, waved, and called out enthusiastically, "Proprietress!" As he spoke, he flew forward and spread his arms to tackle Proprietress in a bear hug. Proprietress' expression was so cold that it was as though one could scrape a layer of frost off her face. Before she could even say a word, though, she was stunned by the sudden hug. When chef and accountant dashed out of the vortex and saw what was going on, they were dumbfounded. Chef opened his mouth so wide that it was as though a fish could be stuffed into it. He snapped out of his dazed state a moment later and poked accountant. "Am I seeing a hallucination? Is Proprietress in his embrace right now?" Accountant was equally astounded, but upon coming to his senses, he furiously summoned his abacus and shook it noisily. With his eyes filled with murderous intent, he was ready to charge forward. "Proprietress is being taken advantage of. Let's kill him together." Chef immediately pulled him back. "Don't panic. It's not easy to take advantage of Proprietress, and she doesn't need us to make a move on her behalf." Accountant shot him a glance and fell silent for a moment before nodding. "You have a point." Then, he put away the abacus and silently waited for the good show to start. Nearby, the Proprietress was so stiff that it was as though she had been bound to the spot. As she felt the immense force, which contained a deep sense of longing, coming from the young man's arms, her fury significantly subsided. Just then, Xianxia was heard saying, "I'm truly happy that you're fine, Proprietress." She sighed. Then Xianxia looked up at chef and accountant before grinning at them. "You guys look energetic as well." While chef chuckled, there was a perfunctory smile on accountant's face. The moment he finished speaking, Xianxia found his head being lifted up forcefully. Releasing the woman in front of him, he asked hesitantly, "What are you doing, Proprietress?" She was grabbing his hair and pulling him backward. The coldness behind her eyes weltered as she said through gritted teeth, "What am I doing? I should be the one asking you that." Upon finishing her words, she landed a kick on his shoulder. Although she was a woman, she was also a powerful sixth-order open heaven realm master. She had exerted a lot of force with her kick, and Xianxia didn't dare to resist. After a grunt, he was sent flying away like a sack and crashed into the nearby cliff, forming a human-shaped hole in it. As the broken rocks tumbled down, Xianxia felt the world spinning around him. Before he could pull himself together, Proprietress pounced on him and grasped his ankle before she spun around several times and hurled him into the magma. Xianxia plunged into the magma with a splash and disappeared below. Following that, Proprietress shot downwards as though she was determined to kill. Chef and accountant both had their faces twitch as they watched. A moment later, violent movements were felt coming from the magma. Following that, a pitiful shriek broke through the sky as Xianxia was blasted out of the magma while flailing his limbs in the air. Proprietress followed him closely and repeatedly assaulted him in a ruthless manner. Faced with the storm of attacks, Xianxia groaned in pain and covered his head. His nose had even started bleeding. "You dare dodge? Try dodging one more time and see what happens." Proprietress beat him up while verbally threatening him. Under the pressure, Xianxia didn't dare to resist in any way. Helpless, he could only lie on the ground and curl up into a ball, covering his head to protect his vitals while he let the Proprietress vent out all her anger on him. "Stop hitting me, Proprietress. I can see what's under your skirt," Xianxia suddenly exclaimed. Proprietress was already incensed to begin with, so upon hearing such loathsome words, she exerted even more strength into her kicks. Unable to take it anymore, chef and accountant immediately went over to pull her back. Proprietress' chest heaved heavily as her figure trembled with fury. She said through clenched teeth, "Let go. I must kill this infuriating boy today. Please calm down, Proprietress. You don't have to do this kind of dirty work yourself. We'll do it for you." As chef spoke, he sent a signal to accountant with his eyes, whereupon they pushed Proprietress away and pounced on Xianxia, who had curled up on the ground, before they beat him up in a merciless manner. Although Proprietress' attacks were hurtful, Xianxia wouldn't have any grudges against her. She must be aware that he had ascended to the open heaven realm, so it was only natural she felt various kinds of disappointment and grief in her heart. However, Xianxia wasn't about to put up with chef and accountant beating him up. Therefore, he shot them a glare to mean that he would settle the score with them for assaulting him today. You dare you glare at them? Proprietress bellowed while placing her palms on her hips. I don't dare to. Forgive me. Xianxia covered his head again. With proprietress backing, chef and accountant became increasingly ruthless. Meanwhile, Xianxia silently counted the number of attacks they landed on him. A moment later, proprietress suddenly spoke up. All right, stop. Do you two really want to kill him? She didn't mean it when she said she wanted to kill Xianxia. Simultaneously, chef and accountant leaped away and retracted their powers since they were done with their job. Xianxia, who was still lying on the ground, slightly parted his fingers and examined proprietress through the gap. Upon seeing that she was still furiously gritting her teeth, he quickly flashed a fawning smile at her. However, his swollen face made him look both funny and abominable. Upon seeing the proprietress took a step forward, Xianxia shuddered and quickly covered his head again. She bent over and clenched the man's collar before hoisting him up to her face. Glaring at him with a pair of slightly reddened eyes, she questioned solemnly. You broke through to the open heaven realm, didn't you? Yes. Xianxia bashfully nodded his head as he wouldn't dare to look her in the eyes. Fifth order, the proprietress asked again. Upon hearing that, Xianxia forced a fawning smile. Why must you infuriate me so? The proprietress stomped her foot so hard the ground shook. The fifth order open heaven realm still makes me an open heaven realm master. Xianxia rubbed his nose. The proprietress glared at him with reddened eyes and gritted her teeth as though she wanted to skin him alive. The moment she heard Xianxia's voice just now, she knew that he must have entered the open heaven realm. Otherwise, he couldn't possibly have entered the shadowless cave heaven. That was because only open heaven realm masters could enter this damned place. However, given his situation, it was extremely difficult for him to obtain a high rank in element treasure. For a moment, she prayed that he had come into this place as a high-rank open heaven realm master. Nevertheless, as soon as she saw him, she knew that he didn't manage to directly advance to the high-rank open heaven realm. In that case, it would give her some solace if he at least was a sixth-order open heaven realm master. Unfortunately, the fifth order was all he could achieve. She was fully aware that Xianxia had built an incredibly solid foundation, and that was the reason she was heartbroken. He had the potential to become a high-rank open heaven realm master directly, but he ended up breaking through to the fifth order instead. It could be said that his martial Tao was ruined and his future was bleak. To the side, accountant and chef fell silent as they looked sympathetically but admiringly at Xianxia. They finally acknowledged him as one of their own. Xianxia must have come all the way here to save the proprietress. Although they had no idea what had transpired for him to eventually advance to the fifth order open heaven realm, they could venture a guess. While Xianxia was unable to find a high rank in element treasure, he was too concerned about the proprietress' safety, which was why he quickly directly advanced to the fifth order open heaven realm and entered this place. The proprietress sighed. She had accidentally fallen into the shadowless cave heaven when she was looking for a high rank in element treasure for Xianxia, but he decided to ruin his own future and become a fifth order open heaven realm master in the end in order to save her. Everything had gone wrong. However, the fact that he had done all this for her proved that he was a righteous and loyal person. Don't cry, proprietress, Xianxia suddenly said as he stared dazedly at the tears sliding down her face. He raised his hand in an attempt to brush the tears away, but the woman turned around and disappeared into the magma. Xianxia pressed his lips together and scratched his head. His impression of the proprietress was that she was a resolute and astute woman. It was as though she was able to support the sky's weight with her slender arms even as it came crashing down on top of her. It never crossed his mind that he would see such a woman cry one day. I'm doomed. Xianxia was apprehensive as he gazed pleadingly at chef and accountant. She must be so mad that she started crying. What should I do? Chef heaved a sigh and went over to pat his shoulder. She isn't crying because she's mad. What do you mean? Xianxia was startled. What is the reason, then? She's blaming herself. Accountant spoke up. She must be thinking that if she hadn't fallen into the shadowless cave heaven, you wouldn't have forcefully broken through to look for her. She believes that you've fallen into such a state because of her. You're supposed to be able to make it to the seventh order directly, but you only ended up in the fifth order. She's crying because she's heartbroken and is deep in self-blame. Yang Kai furrowed his brow. Ascending to the open heaven realm is my own decision. It has nothing to do with her. Chef shot him a glance. Do you even believe what you've just said? Upon hearing that, Yang Kai became startled and fell silent. Chef went on to say, regardless, what is done is done. Let's go in first. Since you've come all the way here to look for us, you'll also be my good brother from now on. In the past, only Old Bai and the accountant were my good brothers, and now you're also included. As he spoke, he went over to hoist the battered Yang Kai. With a serious expression, accountant nodded, you're also my good brother. Then he dashed forward and helped Yang Kai up alongside Chef. Yang Kai suddenly muttered, Chef, you punched me 38 times and kicked me 13 times just now. As for you, you punched me 27 times and kicked me 16 times. As soon as he finished speaking, Chef and accountant released him at the same time, which caused him to fall on his butt. While Yang Kai was in a dazed state, the two of them turned into rays of light and plunged into the magma. A furious Yang Kai said through clenched teeth, you two really are my good friends, huh? Then, he got to his feet and rubbed his backside before chasing after them. There was a cave below the caldera that was separated from the magma using a spirit array. Although the environment wasn't pleasant, it wasn't unbearable at the very least. It was a cave about the size of several houses, and since the restriction had opened up, Yang Kai was able to enter easily. Presently, the proprietress was seated motionlessly on a rock chair as she faced away from the entrance. Chef and accountant, who had come into this place earlier, were just standing behind her. Chef turned his head to take a glance and said in a small voice, he's here, proprietress. Do you want us to chase him away? Or do we let him stay? The proprietress didn't respond to him, as though she hadn't heard anything at all. Accountant followed up, what's the point of asking this question? Proprietress is obviously mad. Chase him away and let him perish on his own outside. Chef grunted in a deep voice, good. Following that, they were ready to make a move as they rolled up their sleeves. Unable to take it anymore, the proprietress said coldly, do you two want to anger me as well? Upon hearing that, Chef stiffened as he put on a fawning smile, we wouldn't dare. Please don't be mad at us, proprietress. We won't chase him away. Then he sent a signal to Yang Kai with his eyes. Yang Kai got the message and took a seat in the opposite corner of the cave. After that, the two of them said to the proprietress in a subservient manner, please get some rest. As they exchanged glances, they carefully moved away and approached Yang Kai. One of them looked condescendingly at him while the other crouched down and stared at him. Chef Tutade, is a swollen face the trend these days, young boy? How do you even have the face to ask such a thing? Yang Kai glared at him. Right after he was beaten up by the proprietress, these two guys mercilessly assaulted him. If it weren't because he had a strong physique, his face would have been deformed by now. Chef grinned meaningfully, these flesh wounds don't matter. I have a blood-staunching paste with me. Come on. I'll help you apply it. Upon finishing his words, he fished out a slimy paste from his space ring and scooped up a bit of it with his fingers before applying it on Yang Kai's face. Yang Kai looked away to dodge him, thinking that he wouldn't need any blood-staunching paste for these flesh wounds. However, he saw the chef subtly signaling with his eyes in the proprietress' direction. Yang Kai's expression changed as he figured out what he was trying to do. Therefore, he stopped avoiding him and let him do it. Nevertheless, he soon screamed at the top of his lungs, ouch! It hurts. Can't you be a bit gentler? Snorting, Chef replied, I'm a cook. This is how I deal with the meat and the fish every day. Yang Kai snapped, do you think I'm some kind of meat to be tenderized? You just said I'm your good brother. Chef refuted, this and that are separate issues. How can you confuse them? Accountant, who was standing in front of them with his hands behind his back, grew impatient and said, all right, stop arguing. Yang Kai, how did you find out we're here? Did Old Bai tell you about it? Yang Kai nodded. And Old Bai came to Void Land and told me what had happened. That's why I rushed over here. How is he now? Yang Kai replied, he's fine, so don't worry about him. He should be in Void Land now. He initially wanted to follow me into this place, but I had no idea what was going on here or whether I would be able to leave or not, so I shook him off and snuck into this place on my own. Accountant nodded gently, that's good. Then he took a glance at the proprietress, and upon seeing that she had straightened up to listen attentively, he secretly found it funny. After that, he asked, there's one thing I don't understand. You'd built up such a solid foundation, but why did you end up in the fifth order open heaven realm? You could have ascended to the sixth order open heaven realm at the very least. Weren't you only lacking a suitable element treasure? Upon hearing that, Xianxia smiled helplessly. It's a long story. Before coming to the shattered heaven, he wasn't aware that only open heaven realm masters could enter the shadowless cave heaven. If he knew, he would have gotten a sixth order element treasure ready just in case of emergencies. However, it was too late as he only found out about it after arriving at this place. Sixth order materials were already highly sought after in Voidland to begin with, to say nothing of the fact that element materials were even rarer. As soon as any sixth order materials appeared in the Star City, those from Voidland would buy them up. In the end, when Xianxia needed such a resource, he realized that he didn't even have one with him. Even Tizhang and the others didn't possess one. Left with no choice, he could only ascend to the fifth order open heaven realm. Upon hearing that, Accountant snorted. I knew that something was off about it. Now, it seems that some people were really behind this. After falling into the shadowless cave heaven, he had some suspicions, but he didn't have any evidence to prove it. After hearing Xianxia's story, though, he realized that his speculations were right. They hadn't accidentally fallen into the shadowless cave heaven. Rather, it was a trap they had been caught up in. After the proprietress was trapped, they released Bai Qi to let him inform Xianxia about it. Then they set up a siege just outside the shadowless cave heaven. It would be best if they could kill Xianxia, thus settling this issue for good. Even if they couldn't kill him, they could force him to ascend to the open heaven realm, as that was the only way to enter the shadowless cave heaven. In the end, their plot was successful as Xianxia had no choice but to ascend to the fifth order open heaven realm. However, they had never expected that Black Crow Divine Monarch would lead a group of people and launch a sneak attack on them at the critical moment, which resulted in them suffering immense losses. Furthermore, in order to make Xianxia willingly ascend to the fifth order, the space rings of all 4 high-rank open heaven realm masters were confiscated. Could be said that their losses were almost unbearable. In any case, they had finally settled the issue regarding Xianxia. This kind of outcome was still acceptable, and while no one was happy, they were at least satisfied. As for their grudges with Black Crow, they would have to settle the score with him in the future. You had the potential to become a 7th order open heaven realm master, but you ended up in the 5th order. Don't you regret it? Accountant asked in a grim voice. If he were the one who had to go through this, he couldn't have remained calm and collected. It's a shame that I'm unable to achieve my goal, but I don't regret my decision. Xianxia shook his head. Given the situation I was in, I probably won't be able to get a high-ranking element treasure even if I waited for 1,000 years. Rather than wasting so much time waiting for something that might not even come to be, I believe I should have a power I can call my own. You're pretty poised about all this, Accountant said admiringly. Xianxia shrugged while replying, there's nothing else I can do about it, so I think I should be optimistic. Just then a rustling sound was heard. Proprietress rose from the chair and approached the 3 of them, who turned their heads to look at her. When she reached them, she extended her hand towards Chef, who promptly passed her the blood-staunching paste and took a rock chair from a nearby spot before placing it behind her. As the proprietress took a seat, she gazed at Xianxia with a conflicted look and scooped up some blood-staunching paste before applying it to the bruises on his face. In response, Xianxia beamed at her. A frustrated proprietress snapped, "Why are you smiling like a fool?" Then, she exerted more force with her hand, which caused him to wail in pain. After a sigh, she rubbed the paste on his skin and said, "Since you've ascended to the 5th order open heaven realm, there's no going back. The small universe in your body has formed, so it'll be useless even if you regret it in the future." "I won't regret it." Xianxia shook his head. "When I arrived in the outer universe, it was you who took care of me like a caring senior. Now that you're in trouble, there's no way I can sit back and do nothing. I'm even willing to barge into the 36 cave heavens and 72 paradises for you, let alone a mere shadowless cave heaven." "Stop boasting. The proprietress shot him a glare and ground her teeth. A senior? Am I that old to you? In an instant, Xianxia was soaked in cold sweat. Proprietress is still in the spring of her youth. The word old can in no way be associated with you. I was wrong. After a snort, the proprietress gently continued. Since you've ascended to the 5th order open heaven realm, your limit will be the 7th order open heaven realm. Given your heritage and foundation, it won't be difficult for you to make it to the 7th order as long as you have enough resources. If you want to go further than that, it'll depend on whether you'll come across the right opportunities, so you'd better brace yourself for it. I understand. Xianxia nodded. By refining open heaven pills and resources of various elements, a cultivator could only rise 2 orders from the one they initially broke through to. This was a universal truth that had been proven by countless cultivators since time immemorial. No one had managed to overcome this law. That was because there was a limit for growth regardless of whether one refined open heaven pills or other resources. However, if one could find innate open heaven pills formed in the universe furnace, they could break through this limit. Unfortunately, such pills were incredibly rare. Whenever the universe furnace appeared, it would cause an upheaval in the 3,000 worlds and lead to a reign of terror and bloodshed. Even the 8th order open heaven realm masters, who rarely stepped out of the cave heavens and paradises, would make a move upon getting wind of its appearance. In that kind of situation, even the 7th order open heaven realm masters were unable to interfere, as they could be easily killed if they were the slightest bit careless. Whenever the universe furnace appeared, it was normal for hundreds, if not thousands of open heaven realm masters to lose their lives, all of them at the mid-rank at minimum. Even many 7th order and 8th order open heaven realm masters would die in this struggle. There's no rush to cultivate, as you have to stabilize your foundation first. When a person reaches the open heaven realm, all they have to do is accumulate more power in order to advance. While the proprietress was giving Xianxia a valuable lesson, she suddenly glanced at his neck and pinched his chin before turning his head slightly. With narrowed eyes, she asked, "How did you get this wound?" Although the wound on his neck caused by Yunfei had basically healed, there was still a mark left. Upon realizing that it was a cut that almost beheaded Xianxia, the proprietress was shocked. "Who hurt you?" she asked in a grim voice. Xianxia batted his eyes and scratched his nose. "Before coming to this place, I went over to Profound Yang Mountain." "Yunfei Bai." The proprietress' eyes turned cold. Xianxia explained, "I had no idea where you were, but I heard that Yunfei Bai from Profound Yang Mountain was hunting for you, so I decided to go over and get some information from them. Don't worry. Although I've suffered a setback, he isn't in any better condition. I left a hole through his chest, which can be considered a little interest for what he owes you." Upon hearing that, chef and accountant exchanged astounded glances. It was only now that they understood how Xianxia was able to find them in the caldera. It turned out he gathered some information from those in Profound Yang Mountain. They secretly admired him for his audacity. They were aware of how powerful those from Profound Yang Mountain were, and Yunfei Bai was in the 6th order open heaven realm. It was inconceivable that Xianxia was able to wound Yunfei Bai and even escape from that place. The fact that he had pulled off this feat was beyond their ability to imagine. When they took a look at the wound on Xianxia's neck, they confirmed that it was a cut that almost decapitated him. He was so close to losing his life. "Are you sick of living? How could a mere 5th order like you barge into Profound Yang Mountain?" The proprietress gazed at him in astonishment, as she still couldn't believe what she had just heard. Xianxia just laughed like a fool while feeling warm in his heart. The proprietress ground her teeth as though she was ready to reproach him, but upon recalling that he had done all this for her, she didn't have the heart to be harsh. Therefore, she said in a caring manner, "You mustn't act on a whim again in the future." Xianxia nodded repeatedly. "I'll remember it." With her eyes filled with a sense of self-blame, the proprietress heaved a sigh. If she had been careful enough back then, she probably wouldn't have fallen into the shadowless cave heaven, which led to Xianxia getting forced to ascend to the 5th order open heaven realm. Just treat your wounds first. You've just ascended to the 5th order open heaven realm, so you have to immediately consolidate your cultivation. You should cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. Although this place isn't particularly safe, we can't find a better location, the proprietress ordered. Moreover, you've just arrived in the shadowless cave heaven, so you're not aware of the dangers here yet. I'll tell you about it at a later time. There's no rush. Before Yang Kai was able to finish his words, the proprietress shot him a glare. Go now. Yang Kai immediately jumped up and complied, yes. Then he walked into a secret room in the cave and sat down with his legs crossed. The proprietress set up a number of barriers outside the room before stopping. Left with no choice, Yang Kai could only start cultivating in seclusion. The wounds inflicted on him in the previous battle had healed, and the assault from the proprietress, chef, and accountant had only resulted in some bruises which could be ignored. The reason he screamed at the top of his lungs just now was to arouse the proprietress' sympathy, which proved to be effective. Now he closed his eyes and checked on his small universe. His small universe was newly formed as he had just ascended to the fifth order open heaven realm. Anyone else would have to cultivate in seclusion for 3 to 5 years to stabilize their foundation. However, Yang Kai's small universe had inherited the heritage of the small sealed world as he had merged the two, so he was able to stabilize it much quicker than normal. Furthermore, the previous 2 battles with Ma Tianyuan and Yun Fei Bai respectively had helped him quickly consolidate his cultivation. Even though the battles didn't last long, his battle against Yun Fei Bai was especially intense as he was constantly at risk of dying. This kind of immense pressure was more effective than cultivating in seclusion, which was dull and tedious. Now, instead of fortifying his fifth order open heaven realm cultivation, Yang Kai had to hurriedly ascend to the sixth order. The shadowless cave heaven was obviously not a hospitable place. Those from profound Yang Mountain, who had 4 sixth order mountain lords with them, had formed grudges with the proprietress and Yang Kai. Even in the 3,000 worlds, profound Yang Mountain could be considered a top second-class great force. Without its 2 divine spirits, Voidland would be incomparable to profound Yang Mountain. Since Yang Kai had injured Yun Fei Bai, those from profound Yang Mountain would never let him off, so it was expected that they would make a move sooner or later. Given his fifth order open heaven realm cultivation, it was impossible for him to survive when dealing with such a behemoth even though he had the proprietress with him. Therefore, Yang Kai would only gain the qualifications to struggle against them by reaching the sixth order. He was already able to injure Yun Fei Bai while he was in the fifth order, so it shouldn't be hard to kill him after he made it to the sixth order open heaven realm. By then he could join forces with the proprietress to oppose the entire profound Yang Mountain. Anyone else would have to wait for a painfully long time if they wanted to go from the fifth order to the sixth order, refining countless open heaven pills and cultivation resources to strengthen the heritage of their small universe. If this process could be completed in hundreds to 1,000 of years, it would be considered fast. Those who had less aptitude and resources could take thousands to over 10,000 years to do this, if they managed to at all. However, Yang Kai was different. He was supremely talented and his foundation was incredibly solid, so he was able to refine open heaven pills and cultivation resources at a much quicker pace than average. Furthermore, he still had a mid-rank world fruit. In the primordial land of the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, Yang Kai repeatedly entered worlds in the fruits and obtained a number of world fruits, which included 2 mid-rank ones and 13 low-rank ones. He also managed to obtain a root from the world fruit tree. After that, Meng Hong from Great Moon Province gave him a mid-rank world fruit, so he ended up with 3 mid-rank ones in his possession. World fruits were heaven-defying treasure that could allow an open heaven realm master to directly ascend to the next order. The limit of low-rank world fruit was reaching the third order, while the limit of mid-rank world fruits was the sixth order. There was no doubt that these fruits were invaluable. When Yang Kai was on the way to the star boundary, he was besieged by He He and forced to let Guo Ziyan and Lu Shui respectively consume a world fruit to turn the situation around. Guo Ziyan was originally a second-order open heaven realm master, so he directly rose to the third order after taking a low-rank world fruit. On the other hand, Lu Shui was a fourth-order open heaven realm master, so she became a fifth-order one after consuming a mid-rank world fruit. Furthermore, Yu He had consumed a mid-rank world fruit, allowing her to reach the sixth-order open heaven realm. Hence, Yang Kai still had one last mid-rank world fruit with him. That was the reason he was willing to ascend to the fifth-order open heaven realm at that time. With such a heaven-defying fruit, it could be said that it made no difference whether he ascended to the fifth order or the sixth order. The only issue was that he had to consume the last fruit. However, he managed to make up for this loss somewhat by taking the space rings of the 4 high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters who had ambushed him. The most valuable aspect of a world fruit wasn't its ability to make a cultivator directly reach the next order, but rather its ability to increase the limit of a cultivator's martial Dao. Such an opportunity could never be purchased with money. Xianxia had ascended to the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm, so theoretically the best he could achieve in the future was the 7th Order. However, after taking a world fruit he would reach the 6th Order directly, and his limit would increase to the 8th Order. When Xianxia was forced to ascend to the Open Heaven Realm outside of the Shadowless Cave Heaven, he had already taken that into consideration. Tijing and the others thought that his future was ruined, but they were not aware of his intentions. The reason Xianxia even agreed to break through was that he had a mid-rank world fruit with him. Inside the secret room, Xianxia fished out a box from his space ring and carefully opened it, whereupon a translucent spirit fruit the size of a fist came into his sight. It was the last mid-rank world fruit he had. Lights were seen swirling around the fruit surface, giving it a rather entrancing look. After taking out the spirit fruit, Xianxia took a bite without hesitation. As the fruit peel broke apart, the fragrant juice flowed into his mouth. He arched his brow as he hadn't expected the taste to be so pleasant. Then he wolfed down the world fruit, including the fruit pit, and licked his lips with a joyful expression. The next moment, Xianxia's face turned solemn as he quickly focused on his small universe. The world fruit's medicinal efficacies dissolved in his stomach and turned into the purest world force imaginable that streamed into all his organs. The force wasn't intense, so it was still bearable for Xianxia. What was special was that there didn't seem to be an end to this stream of world force. Xianxia's small universe opened wide and accepted this world force. He didn't even need to spend any effort to refine it, as the world force quickly assimilated into the small universe, adding to his heritage and foundation without any obstruction. Xianxia was stunned. It was no wonder that the world fruits were extremely precious and were called heaven-defying. When an Open Heaven Realm Master consumed Open Heaven pills and cultivation resources, there was a refinement process. However, the world force streaming out of the world fruit didn't require any effort to assimilate, they just had to open their small universe and accept it. This fact alone made world fruits a unique treasure. As time passed, Xianxia could clearly feel that the heritage of his small universe was increasing in a rapid and steady manner as it marched towards the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm. Outside the secret room, the proprietress had to leave the cave from time to time while chef and accountant stayed there to stand guard for Xianxia so that he wouldn't be disturbed. The reason the proprietress went out was that she had to look for a way to leave this damned place. She had been doing that since before Xianxia's arrival. Unfortunately, she hadn't gotten any clues so far. The Shadowless Cave Heaven was neither big nor small. So over the years, the 3 great forces had gained a footing and searched everywhere they could. If there was really an exit, they would have discovered it by now. It had only been 1 year since the proprietress and the others arrived here, so their efforts weren't comparable to the thousands of years the 3 great forces had invested. One day, while keeping guard in the cave, chef and accountant realized that the barrier had been triggered. Looking up, they saw the proprietress returning from outside as the magma roiled behind her. She used her power to open up a passageway and plunged into the caldera. After looking around, she stared at Xianxia's secret room and frowned. Hasn't he come out yet? Chef shook his head. Not yet. It's been a month, but it seems that his injuries are pretty serious, which is why it's taking him such a long time to recuperate. Do we need to check on him, proprietress? She rejected his idea by shaking her head. There's no need for that. It'd be terrible if we happen to disturb him during a critical moment. Accountant spoke worriedly. The astral wind is due to blow again in a few days. Although this place can fend it off somewhat, we can't totally avoid its influence. By then, Xianxia will be disturbed. That was indeed a serious problem. The place they resided could ward off some of the astral wind's effects, but it wasn't as good as the headquarters of the 3 great forces. If it weren't for this place, they couldn't have made it to this day, as all their cultivations would have been ground down by the eerie wind. Despite that, they had suffered quite some losses to their small universes after a year. The proprietress was in a better state as she was able to persevere given her strong and solid cultivation. However, it had only been a short time since chef and accountant ascended to the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm, so their heritages were not solid to begin with. The brutality of the wind had repeatedly destabilized their small universes. After the astral wind struck each time, They would have to use up a lot of resources to simply stabilize their cultivations, and even more to try to make up for the losses. Upon pondering on it for a moment, the proprietress said, "We'll play it by ear. Don't disturb him for now. However, we have to be wary of those from Profound Yang Mountain. I took a stroll around that place some time ago and realized that they're gathering quite a few people together. It seems that they're preparing to make a move on us." Chef was shocked when he heard that. Does it mean that we have to escape somewhere else? Those from Profound Yang Mountain had a lot of people on their side, including many powerful masters. If the two parties fought, the proprietress would definitely not be a match for them. The reason they had been safe for such a long time was that the proprietress, a sixth-order open heaven realm master, was intimidating enough. The people from Profound Yang Mountain reckoned that even if they could take down the three of them in the end, they would have to pay a hefty price. That was the reason they backed down and allowed the three of them to hide in this place. However, after such a long time, the proprietress' strength must have decreased under the influence of the astral wind. Although chef and accountant were in the fifth-order open heaven realm, they were unable to affect the overall situation. Previously, Xianxia had made a scene in Profound Yang Mountain, which must have infuriated them, so it was expected that they wanted to retaliate against them. The proprietress shook her head. "Where else can we go? The shadowless cave heaven is only so big. The only options left for us are Unrivaled Guild and Twin Spirit Island." She paused for a moment. "Which do you think we should join?" In the past, she had never considered joining one of the three great forces. That was because all of these great forces had established themselves in the shadowless cave heaven, so they would be restricted in many ways if they joined one of them, not to mention that they had to hand over a large part of their resources. Nevertheless, things were different now, and it was time they made a choice. If they remained stubborn, they wouldn't possibly be able to survive in the shadowless cave heaven. After exchanging glances, chef and accountant said in unison, "Twin Spirit Island." The proprietress nodded in agreement. "I share the same sentiment." Among the three great forces in the shadowless cave heaven, Twin Spirit Island was the weakest because they only had two sixth-order open heaven realm masters. Unrivaled Guild had 3 while Profound Yang Mountain had 4. What's more, the head mountain lord was just 1 step away from the 7th order. As a 6th-order open heaven realm master, if the proprietress joined Twin Spirit Island, it would allow them to be on par with Unrivaled Guild, which was a chance for Twin Spirit Island to strengthen its position. Furthermore, the proprietress had headed to Twin Spirit Island some time ago and was greeted hospitably by the 2 island masters. They had a joyous chat during the encounter, and the island masters were obviously trying to persuade her to join them. There was no doubt that they were more polite than those from Profound Yang Mountain. After a moment of silence, the proprietress spoke up. "Let's talk about it after the astral wind is gone." Without any objections, chef and accountant nodded. Then they started setting up some arrays in the cave. The astral wind was able to penetrate everything, including the small universes of open heaven realm masters. Although their arrays were not highly effective, it was better than nothing at all. The proprietress didn't leave again, and 3 days later, the astral wind struck just as expected. Initially, it was just a light breeze, but it soon turned into a gale and caused a sandstorm outside of the cave. Despite the fact that they were hiding inside the lava cave below the volcano, the astral wind was still able to sneak into the place and grind away the world force in their small universes. Obviously, it wasn't the first time the proprietress and the others faced such a predicament, and after so many experiences, they had developed some methods to resist. The strange wind in this damned place would strike once a month for 1 to 2 hours with a margin of error of 3 days. In the entire shadowless cave heaven, besides safe places like the headquarters of the 3 great forces, only a few places like the area around this caldera were able to weaken the strange wind. They had been looking for the reason behind it, but to no avail. Even the 3 great forces couldn't figure it out, as they speculated that it had something to do with the deceased shadowless divine monarch. After all, it was a universe cave heaven left behind by him after his death, so any strange events could be traced back to him. Fortunately, the 3 of them had prepared a lot of cultivation resources. Since the proprietress returned to the cave, she had been refining them non-stop. Presently, she was working harder to replenish the loss of her strength. Suddenly, an extremely pure wood element power exploded from the depths of the cave. The proprietress and the others were stunned as they opened their eyes and fell into a dazed state. An emerald green ancient tree had abruptly appeared before their eyes, one with a gigantic crown that covered the entire cave. A soft green light descended from the tree, containing an astonishing vitality that cast a green glow on their figures and made them feel completely at ease. "What is this?" Chef was astounded. "Is it a divine manifestation?" Accountant exclaimed. The proprietress nodded her head. It should be so. She had sharp vision and vast experience, so she could tell that it was a divine manifestation the moment she saw it. Following that, she turned to look at Xianxia's secret room and realized that it was where the roots of the tree were located. Apparently, the wood element divine manifestation was Xianxia's doing. The proprietress couldn't help but wonder about the order of wood element power Xianxia had condensed, which allowed him to use such an incredible divine manifestation. The moment she found out that Xianxia had condensed the Golden Crow's true fire, she knew that he must have condensed a high-rank wood element power as well, otherwise he couldn't have suppressed the burning power of the Golden Crow's true fire. However, high-rank wood element treasures could still be classified into different orders. The proprietress had never probed Xianxia about his background, but now it seemed that the wood element treasure he had refined was truly extraordinary. Otherwise, such a wood element divine manifestation couldn't have been derived from it. Resting under the gigantic tree, they not only felt warm and comfortable, but also clear-headed, like their thoughts had been accelerated. They had also discovered that they were able to restore their strength at a quicker pace. All of a sudden, Chef exclaimed, "This divine manifestation seems able to ward off the wind, proprietress." Certainly, the proprietress was aware of that as well. The moment the divine manifestation exploded out, the astral wind in the cave disappeared, kept off entirely by the green aura around them. The proprietress' alluring eyes trembled. It had been 1 year since they arrived at this place, and they'd had a taste of the power and strangeness of the astral wind many times. Other than hiding in this cave, they were unable to fend it off in any way. However, now, Xianxia's wood element divine manifestation was able to completely ward off the astral wind that had been giving them a headache for a long time. It went to show that the wood element treasure he had refined was extraordinary. Gazing at his secret room, the proprietress became slightly at ease. Since Xianxia was able to make such a move, it meant that he was aware of what was going on in the surroundings, therefore he should be almost completely healed. Initially, she was worried that the astral wind would have some negative impact on Xianxia. Now, it seemed that not only did he have a way to fend it off, but he could also protect the three of them. Although Xianxia had only ascended to the 5th order, his previous efforts hadn't gone down the drain. This wood element divine manifestation alone was a powerful method in his arsenal. Inside the secret room, Xianxia appeared jovial. Not long after he arrived in the shadowless cave heaven, he was struck by the astral wind once, which resulted in him being quite battered. When he checked on his small universe after that though, he realized that the gigantic tree, which was the manifestation of his towering evergreen divine manifestation, was completely fine. At that time, he speculated that this divine manifestation might be able to protect against the astral wind. Unfortunately, he hadn't had a chance to test this theory. Therefore, when the astral wind struck again, he immediately activated the towering evergreen divine manifestation. Just like he had expected, the aura of the great tree was able to keep out the astral wind. The discovery made him set his mind at ease. With this divine manifestation, he wouldn't have to worry about the astral wind in the shadowless cave heaven again. Moreover, not only could this divine manifestation protect himself, it could also protect those around him. In a place such as the shadowless cave heaven, this kind of divine manifestation was like a trump card that could save their lives, as they wouldn't have to worry about the brutality of the astral wind ever again. Even though the headquarters of the three great forces were safe, the locations were not movable. On the other hand, Xianxia could use this divine manifestation wherever he wanted. Although the protection range was limited, it was more than sufficient. 1 hour later, the astral wind dissipated. Xianxia retracted his divine manifestation, and the gigantic tree with vigorous green light slowly disappeared. Following that, he continued absorbing the medicinal efficacies of the world fruit. Over the past month, he had been continuously absorbing the world force coming from the world fruit. Presently, not only had he made up for the losses that he had suffered in his small universe from the astral wind, but he had also managed to strengthen it. Even the landmass of his small universe had expanded quite a bit. He had a feeling that he had reached the limits of the Fifth Order and, in just a few days, he would be able to achieve a breakthrough and ascend to the Sixth Order. There wasn't a need to worry about whether the medicinal efficacies of the world fruit were sufficient. Since he was able to go from the Fifth Order to the Sixth Order, Yang Kai could do the same. In the meantime, on one of the peaks of profound Yang Mountain, the door of a palace suddenly opened. Second Mountain Lord Yunfei stepped out and looked around before ordering. Inform the Third Mountain Lord and the Fourth Mountain Lord. Assemble the troops and follow me to capture that Hor Lan Yu Rua. A number of Fourth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, who had been keeping guard outside the palace, immediately replied, yes. Looking in the direction of the caldera, Yunfei sported a cold expression. Previously, he was injured by Yang Kai, which was an incredible loss of face. The spear that penetrated his chest had left him severely wounded, and it took him a whole month to recover. He could still feel his chest aching to this day. Although Yang Kai wasn't in a better state either, as he had almost been decapitated. He was only a Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master, while Yunfei was in the Sixth Order. They were not supposed to be an equal match to begin with, as the difference of even one order was like the gap between the heavens and earth. Being wounded so seriously by a boy a whole order lower than him was humiliating, so it was expected that Yunfei would be resentful. In order to recover quickly, he had used a lot of resources that were hard to come by in the shadowless cave heaven, so it could be said that these were immense losses for him. He was extremely vexed. If it weren't because the head mountain lord had his eyes on Yang Kai's mastery over the Tao of space, which might help them find the exit, Yunfei would definitely kill him and rip his corpse into countless pieces. Since the head mountain lord had given the order though, Yunfei wouldn't dare to kill Yang Kai. Nevertheless, it would be fine to treat him harshly. He secretly swore that once he captured Yang Kai, he would cut off all his limbs and stuff him into a jar where he would spend the rest of his miserable life. As for Lan Yu Rua, he was determined to obtain her. He had previously invited her to join Profound Yang Mountain and promised to make her the Fifth Mountain Lord. However, since she embarrassed him and didn't appreciate his kindness, he couldn't be blamed for being hard on her. Meanwhile, the Third Mountain Lord Gengqing and the Fourth Mountain Lord Zhou Ye were already ready. If Yunfei hadn't insisted on personally making a move to get his revenge, they would have brought their people with them and stormed into the caldera a month ago. Upon getting the news at this moment, they responded quickly. Soon, numerous rays of light left Profound Yang Mountain and headed to the hiding place of the proprietress and her subordinates. There were dozens of people in total. The three Sixth Order Mountain Lords led the way, while the weakest among this group were in the Fourth Order. Third Order Open Heaven Realm Masters weren't qualified to interfere in this matter. There were also 6 Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in this team. Such a force was more than enough to deal with Lan Yu Rua and the others. In fact, they had always known that Lan Yu Rua was hiding in the caldera. The reason they hadn't stormed that place until now was that the Mountain Lords were wary of her Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm cultivation. If she became desperate, she might be able to severely wound one or two of them, even if defeating them was impossible. Furthermore, Yunfei wanted to wait for the astral wind to weaken the proprietress and her companions. It would only take 1 or 2 years for her power to noticeably decrease. By then, it'd be much easier to capture her. Even without Yang Kai making a scene on Profound Yang Mountain, Yunfei was already prepared to make a move. Now that the head mountain lord valued Yang Kai's capabilities, coupled with the grudges between them, the battle against Lan Yu Rua was inevitable. This large group of people flew through the sky. In just 2 to 3 days, they arrived at a spot near the caldera. Following the 3 mountain lords' order, the caldera was quickly surrounded as world forces undulated. Inside the cave below the volcano, Chef exclaimed, "Profound Yang Mountain is here, proprietress." The proprietress sported a solemn expression and nodded. "I know." Then, she took a glance at Yang Kai's secret room. "I'll go out to have a look. If things go wrong, immediately bring Yang Kai away from here." Chef asked worriedly, "What about you?" The proprietress replied, "You don't have to worry about me. I have a way to flee." Accountant took a step forward. "I'll stay with you to give you a hand, proprietress." Many people from Profound Yang Mountain are here, even 3 mountain lords have arrived, but I'm still able to escape if I'm on my own. So you don't have to come with me. As soon as she finished speaking, she leaped into the air and dashed out of the cave. As she separated her palms, a passageway appeared in the magma. Chef and accountant watched her leave as their eyes were filled with anxiety. Initially, they thought that after ascending to the Fifth Order Open Heaven realm, they would be able to share some of the proprietress burdens. However, in this kind of situation, Fifth Order Open Heaven realm masters like them were useless. If they tagged along, they might be captured by the enemy and used to threaten the proprietress. They couldn't help but blame themselves for being useless as they were unable to lend her a hand at the most critical moment. Chef's eyelids twitched as he gazed at the secret room. What's wrong with Yang Kai? Why hasn't he come out after 1 month of recuperation? If he had stepped out of the secret room, they could make use of his space secret technique to flee even if they were unable to defeat their enemies. However, he had been meditating for a whole month and he didn't seem aware that the enemy was already at their door. Outside the caldera, the 3 mountain lords stood alongside one another. A lot of people had surrounded the caldera as auras undulated. Upon seeing that the magma was roiling, Yunfei curled up his lips. A snow-white figure shot out of the fiery red magma. The imperial dress she was clad in perfectly outlined her curvy figure. The proprietress stood silently in the void as she flicked her sleeve and swept a glance over these people. Then she fixed her eyes on Yunfei and the others before asking, "What brings you here, mountain lords of Profound Yang Mountain?" Yunfei sneered, "Stop asking the obvious. You're fully aware of why we're here." The proprietress replied, "I'm not you, so how am I supposed to know what you're thinking?" Yunfei scoffed, "Since you're trying to play dumb, just keep doing that. Don't beg for my mercy when I beat you up later." The proprietress shot him a dispassionate glance. "Yunfei, although you're also a 6th Order cultivator, you're no match for me. Go back to where you came from before your pride isn't the only thing that's hurt." A furious Yunfei snapped, "You're pretty arrogant, bitch. Let's see whether you're really as strong as you say you are." Upon finishing his words, his figure shook as his world force swirled around him and he pounced at the proprietress. Gung Qing helplessly shook his head. Second brother is still so hot-tempered. Can't he see that she's trying to goad him into a one-on-one fight with her? Zhouya sighed. Second brother is a conceited man, so just let him be. That Lan Yu Rua has spent a year being exposed to the astral wind, so she isn't as strong as she was before. Just get ready for now. Once second brother injures her, we can join forces and take her down together. Gung Qing nodded lightly before taking a step forward and immediately appeared on the other side to form an encirclement with Zhouya. Looking up, they saw that Yunfei and Lan Yu Rua had begun their clash. Both of them were in the 6th Order Open Heaven realm, so every move they made was world-shaking. As their world forces permeated the air, the explosions of light from their secret techniques erupted everywhere. There was no doubt that it was an intense battle. After observing the battle for a while though, Gung Qing arched his brow as he realized that Lan Yu Rua was truly powerful. Although her strength seemed to have been weakened, she was still able to match Yunfei. He secretly felt astounded. If Lan Yu Rua were at her peak, she would have been truly intimidating. Although she might not be able to defeat the head mountain lord, there wouldn't be a big of a gap between their powers. Since such a top cultivator had some grudges against Profound Yang Mountain, they reckoned that they must end her life. If she escaped this time and sided with either Unrivaled Guild or Twin Spirit Island, it would be troublesome for them. After the intense battle lasted for a while, it was apparent that the 2 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters were equally matched. All of a sudden, someone came over and reported, "3rd Mountain Lord, 4th Mountain Lord, we've detected some strange movements in the caldera." Upon hearing that, Gung Qing stared intently in that direction for a moment before saying, "They're Lan Yu Ru's 5th Order subordinates. The magma is roiling inside the caldera. There should be some secret passageways. These guys must be trying to flee since the situation isn't in their favor." There's one more person with them. Who is that? Zhouya looked in the same direction and gave it a thought before saying, "He must be that brat who injured second brother. It seems that his injuries are pretty severe. 1 month has passed, but he's still unconscious. Someone has to carry him on his back and flee." Gung Qing nodded. "You're right. I'll leave those 3 to you, 4th sister. If we can capture them, it will distract Lan Yuruo. By then, second brother will have an easier time dealing with her. A hesitant Xianxia asked, what about second brother? With a smile, Gongqing replied, don't worry, fourth sister. I'll make sure that he won't get hurt. When the time is right, I'll join forces with him. It was then Xianxia nodded, I'll go then. Following that, she swept a glance over the people around her, whereupon more than 10 people left with her to race after Chef and the others. 100 kilometers in front of them, Chef carried Yang Kai on his back while running away at the speed of the wind. On the other hand, Accountant followed them with a golden abacus in his hand. When he turned his head and saw many rays of light racing after them, he exclaimed, Run, Chef! They're coming right at us. Just like what Gongqing had said, there were some secret passageways under the caldera. It had been 1 year since the proprietress and the others arrived in this place, so they were familiar with the terrain. Even if the cave's entrance was blocked by their enemies one day, they would still be able to flee. Not long after the proprietress dashed out of the caldera, she engaged in a battle with the enemy. Upon seeing that things were deteriorating, Chef and Accountant immediately brought Yang Kai with them and fled through another exit. Although they moved cautiously, they were still detected by their enemies. Now that their enemies were chasing after them, they had no choice but to flee at their top speed. Both of them were only in the fifth-order open heaven realm, and they had a burden with them that was Yang Kai. On the other hand, Zhou Yu was a sixth-order open heaven realm master who had more than 10 people with her. Both parties were not equally matched to begin with, so there was no way they could defeat their enemies if they got into a fight. Therefore, they would only stand a chance to survive by fleeing. At the same time, they prayed that the proprietress would be fine. After running away for a while, a pale accountant cursed, I don't think we can get away, Chef. That woman is pretty swift. Although there was only a difference of 1 order between the 6th and 5th order, the gap in power was vast. Usually, a 6th-order open heaven realm master would be able to deal with 5 5th-order open heaven realm masters with ease. Therefore, it was expected that a 6th-order open heaven realm master was also able to fly at a greater speed. Since Zhou Yu was determined to hunt them down, Chef and Accountant were not able to get rid of her regardless of how hard they tried. Seeing that the distance between them was shortening, Chef tossed Yang Kai at Accountant and said, Leave with him now. I'll delay her for a while. After taking Yang Kai, Accountant gritted his teeth and placed him over his shoulder without hesitation. Then he charged forward at full speed. It wasn't the right time to argue. If they couldn't make a decision quickly, they would fall into a terrible state. Chef took a deep breath as his figure expanded and turned into a several dozen-meter tall giant. The apron around his waist swayed with the wind. With a knife in his left hand and a chopping board in his right, Chef appeared solemn and foreboding. Then, he hurled the chopping board behind him as it expanded with the wind. It was as though the chopping board was about to cover the entire world. The unsuspecting Xianxia and the others came into contact with the chopping board and became bound by a mysterious force. Chef raised his knife and bellowed, I am the knife and chopping board, and you are the fish. Then he brought down the knife as the blade shone viciously. The world around him seemed to have turned into his kitchen with him as the chef that was on top of everything. Xianxia was flabbergasted as she hadn't expected that a fifth-order open heaven realm master would possess such a horrifying divine ability. He was apparently more powerful than the average fifth-order open heaven realm master. Although she was a sixth-order master, she still couldn't help but feel terrified while she was bound to the chopping board. It was as though she was about to be cut into countless pieces. Not daring to be negligent, she yelled and surged her world force as she broke free of the restraint and shot towards Chef. The more than 10 mid-rank open heaven realm masters were not standing idly by either. As they respectively used their secret techniques and artifacts, their world forces became a chaotic torrent. In just 3 breaths' time, Chef's gigantic figure flew backwards as he sprayed out a mouthful of blood. Like a deflating balloon, he shrank rapidly. The colossal chopping board turned back into its original form and was stored by Chef. The blade light dissipated and his world force subsided. Zhou Yu looked up and saw Chef spitting blood while fleeing into the distance. Despite his burly figure, he was extremely agile. With her face turning crimson, she roared, "Follow him. Don't let him flee." She was a sixth-order master and had personally led a team of powerful subordinates. but she was obstructed by a mere fifth-order open heaven realm cultivator. Although it had lasted only several breaths of time, it was humiliating enough. In the meantime, the proprietress had fallen into a perilous state. Yun Feibai was embarrassed as he wasn't even able to hurt his opponent, and upon seeing things not progressing, Geng Qing immediately joined forces with him. As the two mountain lords of profound Yang Mountain worked together, they were able to gain the advantage right away. However, to their horror, they realized that Lan Yurua was still able to cope. Geng Qing couldn't help but feel terrified. Just a while ago, he believed that although Lan Yurua wasn't a match for the head mountain lord when she was at her peak, there would only be a small gap between their powers. Nevertheless, it now seemed that she and the head mountain lord would be equally matched when she was at her peak. Both of them were just one step away from the seventh-order open heaven realm. If not, she couldn't have remained so powerful after being affected by the astral wind for 1 year. However, it all had to end on this day. Regardless of how powerful Lan Yurua was, she had to be killed in this place. The two of them had made a move while their mid-rank open heaven realm subordinates disturbed her from outside the battlefield. Even though she was formidable, there was no way she could leave this place alive. During the intense battle, some people from profound Yang Mountain had to back down from time to time as they were injured by the proprietress. In just one incense stick, 7 mid-rank open heaven realm masters had temporarily lost the capabilities to fight, while one of them was even killed. Although the proprietress managed to hurt many of her opponents, she had been wounded as well. In this kind of situation, it was a miracle that she had made it so far. If it weren't because Geng Qing and Yun Feibai were worried that she would attempt to drag one of them down with her if she was pushed too far, her situation would have been even more difficult. There came a moment when Geng Qing's gaze brightened while he attacked the proprietress alongside Yun Feibai. He initially intended to back down, but he charged forward instead, using a divine ability that shot towards the proprietress when she made a mistake and exposed an opening in her guard. During a life-and-death battle between powerful cultivators, a single opening could determine the outcome. As his world force undulated, his divine ability landed on the proprietress' delicate figure and exploded, whereupon she detonated and turned into dust. Yun Feibai became rooted to the spot as he asked in disbelief, "She died." Geng Qing was stunned as well, and with a frown, he had a feeling that something was off. Although his divine ability was mighty, Lan Yurua wasn't weak. How was it possible that she was killed just like that? Then, he looked down and saw a figure dashing into the magma. It was just an illusion. She fled. Geng Qing bellowed. "Where does she think she's going?" Yun Feibai yelled and plunged into the caldera. "Wait, second brother. There might be a trap." Geng Qing shouted, but it was too late. The impetuous Yun Feibai had already disappeared into the magma. Left with no choice, Geng Qing ground his teeth and followed. However, before he even dove into the magma, there was an explosion of world force beneath him, as though a divine ability was expanding before his eyes. Following that, Yun Feibai wailed while spraying out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying back. There was a dent on his chest and his aura was unstable. It was apparent that he had suffered a serious setback. Then, he spat blood again and roared with a hideous expression. "How dare that bitch set me up?" A speechless Geng Qing reckoned that Yun Feibai's terrible temper would forever land him in trouble. As the magma subsided, they looked down at it and hesitated. After what happened to Yun Feibai, Geng Qing wouldn't dare to rashly plunge into it, as he was worried that Lan Yurua was hiding under the magma. As such, he turned to look at one of his fifth-order subordinates and ordered in a grim voice, "Go down and have a look." The fifth-order open heaven realm master appeared terrified, but he wouldn't dare to disobey the order, so he clenched his teeth and dove into the magma. A moment later, he dashed out of it and shook his head. "That woman is nowhere to be seen. She must have escaped. Where else can she go?" Yun Feibai's eyes were bloodshot as he was resentful of the proprietress. "All of you, get down and search for her. I have to get her regardless of what it takes." Geng Qing explained, "We don't have to do that, second brother. I believe Lan Yurua is going to look for her subordinates. Fourth sister is pursuing them, so we just have to meet up with her, and I'm sure we'll find Lan Yurua over there." Yun Feibai turned to look at him. "Really? What if she doesn't look for her subordinates?" Gongqing said, "Please trust me, second brother. Lan Yurua seems to be someone who values the people around her greatly, so I believe that she won't let her subordinates perish on their own." After giving it a thought, Yunfei nodded. "Good. We'll look for fourth sister." Then he spat out a mouthful of blood and took a deep breath. The wound on his chest was extremely painful. On the other hand, Chef and Accountant were pale as they ran, blood streaming from their mouths. Although Chef had stopped Zhouya and the others for several breaths of time using his secret technique, their opponents resumed chasing them soon after. Left with no choice, Accountant had to make a move as well. In the end, both of them were wounded while their enemies were getting closer and closer. While carrying Yang Kai on his back, Chef cursed, "Brat, are you going to wake up or not? We'll die soon. By then, I'll throw you to that woman and let her rip you into countless pieces." Although Chef was lamenting, he never slowed down his pace. Unfortunately, they were unable to get rid of Zhouya as she was more powerful than them. Seeing as the enemies were getting closer, Accountant bellowed, "Leave! I'll deal with her." Upon finishing his words, he turned around and readied himself to clash with Zhouya. A flabbergasted Chef exclaimed no. However, he was unable to stop him, so he clenched his teeth and whirled around to follow him. Accountant turned his head and bellowed, "What are you doing?" With a solemn expression, Chef replied, "We'll never get rid of her, so I think we should just perish together. Before that, we'll at least bite some flesh off her." Accountant's gaze darkened as he nodded with a heavy heart. Then, Chef quickly fished out a long cloth to tie Yang Kai tightly on his back. With a kitchen knife in one hand and a chopping board in the other, he was prepared to face his enemies. Just then, they saw a ray of light rapidly approaching from behind Zhouya. The ray of light directly stormed into the enemy's formation and caused a lot of 4th Order and 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters to collapse to the ground. Many of them were injured and sent flying away as they sprayed out mouthfuls of blood in midair. An astounded Zhouya turned her head with a fierce gaze and surged her world force to trade moves with the ray of light. As a series of explosive sounds were heard as the world seemed to pale, the ray of light whisked past Zhouya and landed on a spot beside Chef and Accountant. Proprietress. Chef and Accountant were pleasantly surprised. The ray of light was none other than the proprietress who had shaken off Gongqing and Yunfei Bai. Her face was slightly pale as she brushed away the blood on the corner of her lips. Then, she extended her hands and grabbed both of them before yelling, "Let's go!" Chef and Accountant were uncontrollably hoisted into the air. "You're injured, proprietress." Chef gazed at the trail of blood on the corner of her mouth with a worried expression. "It doesn't matter." The proprietress took a glance at Yang Kai on his back and asked, "Hasn't he woken up yet?" Chef shook his head. "No. Perhaps he's at some kind of critical juncture." Given such a commotion, Yang Kai should have been shaken out of his meditative state even if he was still recuperating. However, his eyes remained tightly closed, as though he had cut off all connection with the outside world, which put them in a tight spot. "Should we force this brat up?" Chef asked. "No." The proprietress shook her head. Yang Kai wasn't someone who would put his companions' lives at risk, and he should be aware of what was going on in his surroundings. In other words, he knew what they were going through, but there was a reason that he couldn't wake up. It would be a terrible thing if they forcefully interrupted him. "Where are we going now?" Accountant asked as he turned his head to look at the enemies behind them. Zhouya and her subordinates were still relentlessly chasing after them. The proprietress declared, "Twin Spirit Island." Previously, they were unwilling to join any of the 3 great forces because, first of all, they had just arrived in the shadowless cave heaven, so they were unclear about the current situations in this place. Secondly, once they joined one of the great forces, they would be restricted in many ways and completely bound to that great force. Only after learning that no one had ever left the shadowless cave heaven over the years, did the proprietress start considering joining one of them. Profound Yang Mountain was excluded as there were some grudges between them. Therefore, they were left with Unrivaled Guild and Twin Spirit Island. Among the two, Twin Spirit Island was the weakest as there were only 2 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters on their side, so it was naturally their best option. Some time ago, the proprietress visited Twin Spirit Island and was greeted warmly by the 2 island masters. It was apparent that they were trying to persuade her to join their great force. Initially, the proprietress planned on asking for the opinions of Xianxia and the others before deciding whether they should join Twin Spirit Island. Nevertheless, before Xianxia even awakened, 3 mountain lords of profound Yang Mountain had arrived at her door. Left with no choice now, they could only head to Twin Spirit Island. There was an expansive lake in the shadowless cave heaven, and in the middle of the lake were 2 islands that looked similar in terms of shape and size. Since both of them were closely connected, they were named Twin Spirit Island. As the proprietress and the others headed straight to Twin Spirit Island, it was apparent what their intention was. On the other hand, Zhou Yu was still relentlessly pursuing them, and 2 days later, Yunfei Bai and Geng Qing finally joined her. As Geng Qing looked in the direction the proprietress and the others were heading, he gave it a thought and pondered. Is Lan Yu Ruo going to Twin Spirit Island? When did she even come into contact with those island masters? Yunfei Bai snorted. That bitch is a 6th order open heaven realm master after all. So it's expected that those 2 want her to join their sect. I guess they came into contact some time ago. We need to catch them quickly. We mustn't let them reach Twin Spirit Island. If she joins forces with Hua Yong and Shu Mudan, it'll be difficult to deal with them. Hua Yong and Shu Mudan that he just mentioned were the island masters of Twin Spirit Island. They were also a married couple. It was said that they had been in the shadowless cave heaven for even longer than the head mountain lord. Geng Qing narrowed his eyes before chuckling. It's been a short time since Lan Yu Ruo arrived in this place, so she isn't aware of that couple's temperaments. She must be acting out of desperation since she has no other choice. Don't worry, second brother. It'll be a good thing if she reaches Twin Spirit Island. Yunfei Bai shot him a glance. Why is it a good thing? Geng Qing explained, aren't you aware of what that couple is like, second brother? Although both of them are in the 6th order open heaven realm, the same as us, they're quite cautious and timid. The reason they want to recruit Lan Yu Ruo is that she's a 6th order open heaven realm master. If she becomes a part of them, they'll be able to better resist profound Yang Mountain and unrivaled guild. However, since the 3 of us are hunting Lan Yu Ruo down, will the couple have the guts to accept her? After giving it a thought, Yunfei Bai nodded. You're right. Those 2 have always been cowards. If they find out that woman has some grudges with us, they'll likely refuse to accept her group. Zhou Yu said if she is turned down, she won't have a way out anymore. Yunfei Bai's eyes brightened as he looked at the front and put on an eerie smile. They're basically flying into the death trap. Realizing this, an elated Yunfei Bai slowed down a little as he calmly followed the proprietress and her group. As they kept moving forward, they arrived at a beautiful lake 2 days later. The proprietress, chef, and accountant stepped on the water and reached Twin Spirit Island soon after. Twin Spirit Island was surrounded by a barrier, and no one was able to see through the fog and find out what was going on inside. The proprietress immediately fished out a jade token and infused her power into it. The jade token instantly turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the grand array. This jade token was given to her by the island masters when she visited Twin Spirit Island previously and could be used as a communications artifact. They hoped that she would join their sect one day, so naturally they provided her with a way to contact them. After the jade token was gone, the proprietress turned her head and saw many rays of light rapidly approaching them. It would probably take them no more than a quarter hour to arrive, so she was naturally worried. A moment later, the fog around the grand array roiled and a figure stepped out of it. He was a 4th order open heaven realm master who was clad in tight-fitting clothes, which made him look quite well put together. The 4th order open heaven realm master looked around, and when he saw the proprietress, his expression turned solemn. I'm sorry for being late to welcome you, Madame Lan. Please forgive me. The proprietress had paid a visit previously, so he naturally recognized her. It's fine. Please tell the island masters that I'll agree to the conditions they mentioned and am willing to join Twin Spirit Island, the proprietress declared. The 4th order open heaven realm master was evidently startled. Although he wasn't sure what these conditions were, he wasn't in any place to ask as he was just a messenger. As such, he simply nodded. Please give me a moment, madam. After he finished speaking, he turned around and disappeared into the grand array. Before he left, he looked into the distance with some concern. In a parterre garden on Twin Spirit Island, a middle-aged man with a jade crown was having a stroll with a pregnant woman clad in an imperial dress. Pleasant fragrances permeated the place as flowers of different colors bloomed around them. The woman was stroking her belly while the man held her arm to support her weight. He looked down at the bulging belly from time to time with a joyful expression. They were none other than the island masters of Twin Spirit Island, Huayong and Shu Mudan. While having a walk in the garden with his wife, Huayong asked gently, "Do you love this garden, my dear wife? All of these flowers were brought back from the outside world, and some of the species are extremely rare." Shu Mudan put on a reserved smile. "You didn't have to do all this, husband. These flowers cannot be consumed for cultivation. The subordinates might have some complaints against you since you told them to use so many resources for this." Huayong asked who would dare to have any complaints. Then he stood in front of his wife and crouched down before pressing his head against the bulging belly. "Moreover, Linner will only be pleased when you're happy. That way, he'll leave your stomach sooner." Shu Mudan started blushing as she looked around and poked the man's head with one finger. "How old do you think you are? Get up now. Others will laugh at us if they see this." Huayong took her hand and caressed his own face with it before he looked up and flashed a smile at her. "Who would dare to laugh at me? Island masters." Just then, someone rushed into the place. When he saw the head island master crouching down in front of the second island master and caressing his own face with her hand while the second island master blushed with a loving expression, he became stunned. Shu Mudan's face turned a shade redder in embarrassment. Huayong slowly got up and straightened his face before coughing into his fist. "What's wrong?" The person looked down at his feet and reported, "Madame Lan is here again. She said that she'll agree to your conditions to join Twin Spirit Island." Upon hearing that, Huayong and Shu Mudan exchanged glances and became ecstatic. The former laughed and said, "Very good. Although some people will fall into the shadowless cave heaven from time to time, sixth-order masters are rare. If Lan Yu Ruo could join us, our power will be greatly strengthened." Then, he turned to look at the messenger. "Is she outside?" The person replied, "Madame Lan is indeed waiting outside. Welcome her inside right now." Huayong ordered, then changed his mind. No. My wife and I will personally welcome her. If Lan Yu Ruo, a sixth-order open heaven realm master, joined Twin Spirit Island, she would be the third island master. In other words, she would be the third most important person after Huayong and Shu Mudan, so she definitely deserved to be welcomed by the couple personally. Before the two of them could leave the garden, however, the messenger continued, "Island masters, there's one more thing I need to tell you. Madame Lan seems to be injured, and just now, I could see that some people were pursuing her. Who are the ones chasing her?" Huayong frowned. Lan Yu Ruo was a sixth-order open heaven realm master, so rarely anyone in the shadowless cave heaven could hurt her or even have the guts to pursue her. Suddenly, he felt there was more to her trying to join them at this moment than it appeared. The messenger replied, "Island masters, you've not stepped outside for years, so you're not aware of what's going on. There are some grudges between Madame Lan and Profound Yang Mountain's second mountain lord." As the person spoke, Shu Mudan suddenly waved her hand, then the water around them came together and formed into a mirror. The reflection on the mirror showed the view outside of Twin Spirit Island. Through the mirror, they could see Lan Yu Ruo and her three subordinates waiting outside the barrier. One of them was unconscious, so he had to be carried on another person's back. As Shu Mudan looked into the distance, her expression changed. "Three mountain lords from Profound Yang Mountain are over there." Huayong's expression turned solemn as well. He could see the intimidating Yunfei Bai and the others through the mirror. Of the four sixth-order mountain lords of Profound Yang Mountain, 3 of them had come all the way here with many subordinates, which went to show that they were determined to end Lan Yu Ruo today. What are the grudges between Madame Lan and Profound Yang Mountain's second mountain lord? Huayong asked in puzzlement. Since his wife was pregnant, he had been staying on Twin Spirit Island to keep her company and ignored the affairs in the outside world. Before Lan Yu Ruo paid a visit previously, he wasn't even aware that there was a new sixth-order open heaven realm master in the shadowless cave heaven. Certainly, he had no idea what was going on when he saw the sight. The messenger replied, "I don't know the details, but those from Profound Yang Mountain have always been arrogant, and the second mountain Lord Yunfei Bai is a lascivious man. Madame Lan knew nothing about the affairs here when she arrived in the shadowless cave heaven, so she might have gotten into a conflict with them for some reason. Upon hearing his explanation, Hua Yong nodded and said with a dark explanation, "Now I know why Lan Yu Rua is eager to join Twin Spirit Island. She's basically left with no other choice now, so she wants to make use of us to resolve this crisis." Clever of her. He snorted. Shu Mu then asked with a frown, "What's your plan, husband?" Hua Yong replied, "If she had agreed to join Twin Spirit Island previously, I would have welcomed her. However, since she intends to make use of us now, we can't grant her wish. If we accept her, we'll be offending Profound Yang Mountain." A worried Shu Mu Dan said, "If we don't let her in, she won't be able to deal with Yun Fei Bai and the others on her own." "That's her own problem." Hua Yong shook his head and gazed at his wife. "What do you think?" After giving it a thought, Shu Mu Dan said, "If Madame Lan could join Twin Spirit Island, our power will increase significantly, and we'll have the might to go up against Profound Yang Mountain and Unrivaled Guild. Although the three great forces in the shadowless cave heaven have coexisted peacefully so far, we're still the weakest in the end. Therefore, we control far less territory than the other two great forces. Do you want to accept her even now?" Hua Yong asked. With a helpless smile, Shu Mu Dan shook her head. "I have no idea what to do. I'll leave the decision to you, husband." Hua Yong took a glance at her bulging belly. Then his gaze became determined. Ignore her. Although they could strengthen Twin Spirit Island's power by accepting Lan Yu Rua, Yun Fei Bai and the others would never let her off as they appeared determined. There was bound to be a battle if they took a side now, and given the situation his wife was in, there was no way she could fight. No one could afford to take responsibility if their child was affected. They had waited for a long time before they had their own child, so they naturally valued him above all else. Shu Mu Dan let out a sigh. As a woman herself, she sympathized with Lan Yu Rua for what the latter was going through. But at the same time, she had to protect her child, which was why she was feeling helpless. Outside of Twin Spirit Island's barrier, the proprietress felt her heart sinking. The two island masters hadn't shown up, nor had they opened the barrier. It was apparent to her that they were not willing to invite trouble to themselves. She wasn't in any place to blame them, though. Although she had intended to join Twin Spirit Island previously, her arrival at this time was indeed inappropriate. The reason she made this decision was that she had no other choice. Otherwise, she would never want to trouble anyone else. Seeing as the enemies were about to reach them, the proprietress immediately decided to flee. Run? Then she surged her power to wrap up Chef and the others before attempting to head in a different direction. "Where do you think you're going?" Someone was heard yelling as a figure abruptly appeared in that direction. He was none other than the third mountain lord Gengqin. It wasn't certain when he had snuck to the other side, but he happened to be right in the proprietress' way. Faced with an incoming divine ability, the proprietress hurriedly parried and was forced back to her original spot. In the meantime, the sounds of people breaking through the air were heard as many figures landed in all directions and surrounded them. With a cold gaze, the proprietress swept a glance over the three mountain lords of Profound Yang Mountain. There was a gloomy expression on Yun Fei Bai's face as he spat and raised his chin. He appeared smug as he looked at the proprietress. "Keep running. Let's see where you can run now." Without saying a word, the proprietress glared at him. Yun Fei Bai took a glance at the fog-covered Twin Spirit Island and put on a devious smile. "Do you want to seek refuge in Twin Spirit Island? Have you even investigated the temperaments of this useless couple? Do you think these cowards have the guts to accept you?" Inside Twin Spirit Island, Hua Yong sported a dark expression and snorted. Not only could they see the outside view through the mirror, but they could also hear what was happening as well. That was why he could hear Yun Fei Bai's words. A conceited Yun Fei Bai shouted, "Hua Yong, Shu Mu Dan, this woman wants to side with Twin Spirit Island. Do you want to open up the barrier and let her in?" No one responded from the other end of the barrier. With his palms spread, Yun Fei Bai said, "Look, they don't even dare to respond to me. Do you think that they can protect you?" "Nah, V," Zhouya said with a frown. "We should deal with our business here first, second brother." It was too arrogant to provoke the island masters right in front of their door. Although Profound Yang Mountain was stronger than Twin Spirit Island, the latter still had two sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Masters on their side. If they became infuriated, they might act out in anger, which would be extremely detrimental to them now. Yunfei snorted and gazed at the proprietress. "Whore, I'll give you one last chance. If you don't want to die, be good and become my woman. Otherwise, this place will be your graveyard." Geng Qing was exasperated as he really thought that Yunfei was so lascivious that he was willing to risk his life for a moment's pleasure. It wouldn't have mattered if they hadn't found out Lan Yurua's true strength. However, after the battle on this day, they realized that this woman was just as powerful as the head mountain lord. Although Yunfei was also a sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Master, he would never be able to control her. Only by killing her could they solve this problem for good. That was the reason Geng Qing was rendered speechless when he saw Yunfei still lusting after her at this point. A dog's mouth can never smell fresh. The proprietress shot a deathly glare at Yunfei. "Stop spouting nonsense and fight. There may be many people on your side, and it's true I cannot defeat you, but I can take at least one of you down with me before I die. Let's see which one of you will be so unlucky." Impudence! Yunfei stomped his foot on the ground in rage. "Third brother, fourth sister, come with me and kill this woman." His murderous intent surged as he raised his hand and summoned a huge axe almost 3 meters tall. The flash of light swirling around it suggested that it was an extraordinary artifact. Upon seeing that Yunfei had summoned this artifact, Geng Qing knew that he was determined to kill this woman. Geng Qing and Zhou Yu traded glances and summoned their own artifacts as well, whereupon they shot towards the proprietress. Before they even reached their opponent, their rumbling world forces shook the surrounding world. Inside Twin Spirit Island, Xu Mudan appeared sympathetic. All of them were in the same order, so the outcome for Lan Yurua was foreseeable since she was fighting against 3 enemies on her own. After a sigh, Xu Mudan looked away. She had always been a gentle person, and since her pregnancy, she had become even more sensitive. Hence, she didn't have the heart to see another woman being killed. Faced with the world forces of 3 sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Masters, Chef and Accountant found it difficult to even breathe, as though a mountain was pressing down on them. Even their legs were beginning to buckle under the pressure. And they were only bearing the fallout from the enemy's pressure. At the center of the 3 sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Masters' pressure, however, the proprietress closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Chef and Accountant widened their eyes as though they were waiting for something to happen. The next moment, the proprietress opened her eyes, which appeared as fierce as lightning. A red glow suddenly swirled around her and engulfed her entire figure as though it had spirituality of its own. Some explosive sounds were heard, and when the red glow faded, the proprietress was already covered in a scarlet artifact armor, which was so tight-fitting that it perfectly outlined her alluring figure. A flash of light was seen swirling around the armor. There were 2 dragons on her shoulders with eyes that seemed completely lifelike. There was also a helmet that covered her entire head except for her soul-piercing eyes. Her arms were protected by very solid pads, and as she made a grabbing gesture, a scarlet sword appeared out of thin air as though she had pulled it out from the void. The gale stirred up waves on the lake behind her as the proprietress seemed to have turned into an armor-clad female knight, valiantly wielding the greatsword in her hands. However, unlike her usual self, the proprietress clad in this armor radiated a rich monster chi. "Blood monster battle dress," Chef murmured under his breath with a pale face. Although it was called the Blood Monster Battle Dress, it had nothing to do with Blood Monster Divine Monarch from the Blood Monster Cave Heaven. Chef and the others had no idea where the proprietress obtained this armor, but they knew that she never used it unless she had no other choice. The fact that she had summoned this artifact armor suggested that they were facing a real life-or-death crisis. Although she could significantly increase her power by using the Blood Monster Battle Dress, the rich monster chi within the armor had an erosive effect. The longer the proprietress wore it, the more her consciousness would be eroded, leaving extremely difficult issues to resolve afterwards. Therefore, the proprietress would never use the Blood Monster Battle Dress unless it was absolutely necessary. Although Chef and Accountant were aware that she had such an artifact, they had never seen her use it before. This was the first time. The three mountain lords of profound Yang Mountain were stunned upon seeing the proprietress' transformation. As their gazes fell upon the armor and sword, they immediately realized that the blood monster battle dress was truly extraordinary. Gongqing suddenly exclaimed, "Watch out, second brother." Yunfei Bai's axe was already right above the proprietress' head, as he bellowed and forcefully brought down his weapon. At the same time, he surged his world force to empower the axe, making it seem like he could split apart the shadowless cave heaven with this strike. Faced with this world-shaking attack, the proprietress raised her sword with both hands as a shockwave spread around from her feet. The next moment, she ignored the limits of space and abruptly appeared before Yunfei Bai as she clashed with the axe with her sword. Following a deafening clang, a visible halo of light spread out 1,000 kilometers in all directions, shaking space wherever it passed. Yunfei Bai's pupils shrank as he was sent flying away like a cloth sack, his gaze filled with complete shock. He had traded moves with Lan Yu Rua in the caldera not long ago, and although she was truly powerful, he was still able to compete with her. However, at this moment, this one clash made him realize that there was a huge gap between their powers. Where does the artifact on this woman come from? Why does it contain such horrifying power? While he was still lost in his thoughts, the proprietress, whose armor seemed to burn with terrifying flames, reached him as she raised her sword and chopped down. A panicked Yunfei Bai immediately parried the attack with his axe. A horrifying force descended upon him. Pressured by the oppressive world force, he found it difficult to breathe. Following several loud clangs, Yunfei Bai sprayed out a mouthful of blood. It was apparent that he had been injured. A relentless proprietress raised her sword again as she appeared determined to ruthlessly kill him. Presently, she was fighting 3 against 1. And although her power had increased significantly thanks to the blood monster battle dress, she would still fall into a perilous state if she couldn't kill at least one of her opponents quickly. Feeling the aura of death descending upon him, Yunfei Bai widened his eyes in horror. Faced with this series of attacks, he was unable to counterattack at all, and if he couldn't dodge the coming strike, even if he survived, he would be severely wounded. At the critical moment, Gongqing and Zhou Ye came to his rescue. Since the 3 mountain lords had come here together, the other 2 certainly wouldn't let the proprietress kill Yunfei Bai without doing anything. In fact, the moment the proprietress and Yunfei Bai began trading moves, the other 2 mountain lords started rushing towards the battlefield. Nevertheless, due to the proprietress' incredible speed and strength, it wasn't until this moment that they caught up. Still, it was better late than never. Zhou Ye wielded her long sword and infused her world force into it, whereupon a sword screen engulfed the proprietress. At the same time, Gongqing appeared from the side as he performed hand seals and bombarded the proprietress with different divine abilities. The 2 of them finally managed to force the proprietress back. Using this delay, Yunfei Bai hurriedly dashed backwards and dodged the attack. As a breeze whisked across his sweat-soaked clothes, he felt cold all over. Prior to this battle, he would never have imagined that there was such a wide gap between Lan Yu Rua and him since both of them were in the 6th order. If Gongqing and Zhou Ye hadn't come to his rescue just now, he would have been critically injured or even killed. Although he admittedly underestimated his opponent, it also went to show that the proprietress was horrifyingly powerful. This kind of humiliation made him feel completely ashamed and enraged. So he charged forward with his axe and surrounded the proprietress alongside Gongqing and Zhou Ye, launching all sorts of divine abilities at her in a maddened rage. Meanwhile, in the parterre garden on Twin Spirit Island, Hua Yong gasped as he gazed at the battlefield through the water mirror and said in shock, "I can't believe Lan Yu Rua is so strong." Although there was a barrier around Twin Spirit Island, he could still feel terrifying energy fluctuations coming from outside. Still reeling from the shock, he thought it was fortunate that they hadn't accepted Lan Yu Rua into Twin Spirit Island. Given the power she had showcased, if she really joined them, the couple wouldn't be a match for her even if they joined forces. He believed that they had to be cautious. If Lan Yu Rua had some ulterior motive, the couple wouldn't be able to deal with her. Moreover, Xu Mudan was pregnant, so her combat capabilities were severely limited right now. On the other hand, the more observant Xu Mudan gave it a thought and said, "She must have paid a heavy price to obtain this kind of power. It seems to me that the armor she's wearing is quite malevolent." Hua Yong pondered on it for a moment and nodded. You're right, my wife. The proprietress was able to match the 3 mountain lords of profound Yang Mountain on her own, leading to an intense battle. Yun Fei Bai and the others were horrified as they were unable to take her down even though they had joined forces. The blunt-looking sword in her hands contained a power that could make them all flustered. To their dismay, the 3 of them could only come to a draw in a fight against Lan Yurua at the moment. On the other hand, Chef and Accountant were in a perilous situation. The 3 mountain lords of profound Yang Mountain had brought with them dozens of mid-rank open heaven realm masters. These people wouldn't dare to interfere in the battle between the 6th Order masters as just the fallout could be deadly to them. So they turned their eyes to Chef and Accountant. The 2 of them ran away in embarrassment as the lights of secret techniques expanded behind them, causing them groan and grunt in pain. Fortunately, both of them were 5th Order open heaven masters, so although they were unable to deal with the dozens of enemies, they could still flee for a while. However, as time passed, the people from profound Yang Mountain formed an encirclement around Chef and Accountant and were slowly tightening it. It was apparent that there would come a point when the encirclement became so small that the 2 of them would be unable to flee. The proprietress repeatedly wanted to lend them a hand, but she was blocked by Yun Fei Bai and the other mountain lords. The situation seemed to be in Yun Fei Bai and the others' favor because they realized that as time passed, Lan Yurua's moves became less sharp even though the power she was able to use remained unchanged. The power of the divine abilities she cast also appeared somewhat unsteady. Looking up, they saw that there was a layer of blood mist surrounding her scarlet armor, and her eyes under the helmet had become bloodshot. The monster chi made her look like a real monster. The 3 of them were astounded at first, but soon realized that there must be a downside to this artifact armor. Couldn't be used for a long time, or else there would be some hidden concerns. Understanding this, they switched tactics and stopped clashing with the proprietress head-on. Instead, they circled around and stalled for time. Judging from Lan Yurua's actions, they knew that she would become increasingly erratic as time passed, and eventually, they would be able to easily deal with her. For a battle at this level, having more power didn't necessarily mean that one could secure victory. The monster chi around the proprietress thickened, as there seemed to be a layer of blood swirling around her scarlet blood monster battle dress. The eyes under the helmet were crimson as they reflected a glint of madness and brutality. Every strike she made with her sword seemed able to break the heavens and earth apart, but at the same time, she became increasingly wild and unfocused. She was unable to react when Xianxia came at her with her sword and penetrated a junction in the armor, piercing through her belly. Before Xianxia could celebrate her victory, though, the proprietress turned her head and hacked at her with her great sword. Xianxia exclaimed and retracted her sword before backing off quickly. However, she was still struck by the violent force as the vitality in her chest convulsed, almost causing her to spit blood. Seeing as the relentless proprietress chased after her, Xianxia grit her teeth and parried the incoming flurry of attacks. On the other hand, Gung Qing attempted to hold the proprietress down, while Yun Fei Bai forcefully hacked his axe at her figure. Following a loud boom, the proprietress' lithe figure plunged into the lake and caused a huge splash. The spot where she fell into the water was boiling and dyed red. The fish in the lake that were attracted by the metallic tang went over to absorb the red light, but they all exploded a moment later. Following a loud splash, a red glint flashed through the lake's surface as the proprietress shot out of the water. Due to Yun Fei Bai's strike earlier, she seemed to have regained some clarity in her mind, and there was a sense of struggle behind her bloodshot eyes. However, when she saw that Chef and Accountant were in danger, the sense of struggle disappeared and was replaced by madness again. Holding the sword in one hand, she wielded it and formed a ray of red light before charging towards Yun Fei Bai. Hong hong hong. Loud noises were continuously heard as their world forces clashed. In the garden, Hua Yong narrowed his eyes and remarked, "Lan Yurua is doomed." To his side, Shu Mudan let out a sigh. As a fellow woman, she had to admit that Lan Yurua was more powerful than she was. However, Lan Yurua was on her own, so she was unable to defeat the 3 mountain lords from profound Yang Mountain. As a fellow 6th Order master, she was fully aware of how powerful the 3 mountain lords from profound Yang Mountain were and understood that she might not be a match for any one of them even if it was a one-on-one fight. However, Lan Yurua was able to face 3 of them for such a long time even though she was on her own. In fact, given the power she had showcased, she could totally flee and those from Profound Yang Mountain would be unable to stop her. The reason she stayed and fought this life and death battle was that she had to protect her companions. Even if she could flee, the people around her were unable to do so. Therefore, Shu Mu Dan admired the proprietress for her loyalty and righteousness. She turned to look at her husband and parted her lips, but she was unable to say anything in the end. It had been a long time since they got married, so Hua Yong was able to figure out her intentions by looking into her eyes. It was apparent that she wanted to plead with him to let Lan Yurua in, but as their eyes met, he slowly shook his head. By letting Lan Yurua in, they would offend those from Profound Yang Mountain and invite trouble to themselves. Even if they could somehow appease those from Profound Yang Mountain, the power Lan Yurua had showcased this time made Hua Yong feel wary. Given her strength, she was completely capable of becoming the head island master. There was no way the couple would allow her to usurp their position. Shimudan let out a long sigh and stroked her bulging belly. There was a loving expression on her face as she hummed a nursery rhyme to distract herself. I can't believe we'll lose our lives here. Chef and accountant were facing away from one another. Their figures were soaked in blood as they glowered at the dozens of mid-rank open heaven realm masters who had surrounded them. There was a huge gap in the numbers of people between both sides, so there was no way those from first in had any hope of winning the battle. In fact, they were practically doomed as they were about to get killed. If it weren't for their near-feral retaliation just now, these people would have pounced on them instead of appearing wary. Since we're going to die anyway, we should probably just get it over with right away. Accountant raised his abacus with one hand. His blood streamed down his arms and dropped on the lake before dyeing it red. Upon hearing that, Chef turned to look in the proprietress' direction where he saw 4 figures flying around. Presently, the 3 mountain lords of Profound Yang Mountain were locked in a fierce battle with the proprietress as they cast their divine abilities at her. After letting out a breath, Chef lifted his knife and said, "You're right. The sooner we head for the Yellow Springs the better." The reason the proprietress wasn't willing to leave was that the 2 of them were still alive, so she didn't have the heart to abandon them. If both of them lost their lives, perhaps the proprietress would flee and be able to obtain revenge for them at a later time. Given her strength, she would be able to flee even though she couldn't defeat the 3 mountain lords. They exchanged glances and laughed heartily. Since they could go to hell together, they reckoned that they wouldn't feel lonely at the very least. As their gazes parted ways, they sported resolute expressions. They pushed their small universes madly as their world forces surged and spread out. Even if they had to lose their lives in this battle, they would bring some enemies down with them. Kill 1 to break even, kill 2 to profit. Just when they were ready to make a move, a pair of hands were suddenly placed on Chef's shoulders as a voice was heard saying, "Take it easy. I don't want to die yet." A flabbergasted Chef turned his head and almost hacked the person with his knife. When he realized who spoke though, he snapped bitterly, "Little bastard, you're finally awake." The person who spoke just now was Yang Kai, who had been lying on Chef's back this whole time. Yang Kai patted his shoulders and leaped away from him before gently saying, "I've been awake the whole time." However, he was at the most critical moment of refining the world fruit just now, so he couldn't stop halfway, or else all his effort would be wasted. That was the reason he was unable to respond to them. "Save the proprietress right now," Chef demanded anxiously. "She's in danger. Bring her away. Accountant and I will hold up the enemy for you. She's in danger, but you 2 aren't in a better state." Yang Kai looked around as his gaze turned cold. Then, he stepped forward with a grim expression. "I'm in a terrible mood, so I don't mind killing some people to vent out my anger. Scram if you don't want to die." Chef and accountant gazed at him in shock, thinking that he hadn't fully come to his senses after a long stupor. All the mid-rank open heaven realm masters around them sported strange expressions. Seeing Yang Kai stepping closer though, one of them pointed at him with his sword and yelled, "Kill!" As soon as he spoke that word, he thrust out his sword towards Yang Kai. His world force surged as the sword shadows multiplied. However, when he realized that Yang Kai had disappeared from his line of sight, he felt his chest tightening as a sense of uneasiness rose within him. Before he was able to react, he saw a point of a spear rapidly enlarging before his eyes. The spear seemed to have turned into a great dragon as it widened its maw and pounced on him. His vision was shrouded in darkness, leaving him flustered and horrified. He hurriedly surged his world force to parry the attack, but an even more violent force penetrated his defense like it was paper. An explosive sound was heard as the spear penetrated the person's head and exploded it. His blood and flesh scattered about as his headless corpse convulsed, even as he held out his sword in front of him. Without stopping, Xianxia disappeared from everyone's sight again as a great dragon roar shook the world. The azure dragon spear flashed in and out of everyone's vision for a moment, and when Xianxia reappeared, he had broken through the encirclement of these open heaven realm masters. Although he appeared slow, he was actually heading towards the battlefield of the Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters at incredible speed. Even though he was gone, his voice still lingered in the air. If the two of them lose even one more strand of hair, all of you will have to die. Chef and accountant were dumbfounded as they couldn't figure out how Xianxia managed to break through the encirclement, but soon just thought that space principles were indeed useful as no one was able to capture Xianxia. The next instant, though, the two of them widened their eyes and stared at the enemies around them in disbelief. A bloodlight expanded as a person exploded, then the same thing happened to another person. Hong hong hong. In less than a breath, 8 mid-rank open heaven realm masters exploded into blood mist, leaving no trace behind. While the two of them were flabbergasted, the enemies around them were horrified. Just now, they could see that Xianxia exploded one of their companions' head with his spear. However, that person was only in the Fourth Order Open Heaven realm, so it wasn't surprising that he would lose his life due to his negligence in this life-and-death battle. Nevertheless, most of the 8 mid-rank Open Heaven realm masters who had just died were in the Fifth Order. Only Xianxia had made a move, so it was apparent who the murderer was. He had to possess a horrifying strength to be able to kill 8 mid-rank Open Heaven realm masters with ease in just a flash. Presently, no one dared to make a move on Chef and Accountant, who were still surrounded. Even though they could easily kill these two, they were wary of the threat Xianxia had left behind. 9 of their companions had lost their lives already, so it was obvious to them that only the 4 mountain lords were able to deal with him. What's going on with that brat? A dazed Chef watched as Xianxia rapidly dashed away. Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm. Accountant was dumbstruck. As Xianxia charged forward, his aura exploded. It was apparent to them that his aura was that of a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master, as he didn't even attempt to conceal it. When did that happen? Chef fell into a dazed state. If he wasn't mistaken, Xianxia was only in the Fifth Order when he found them 1 month ago. It had only been 1 month since he started recuperating, so how did he manage to ascend to the Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm? The speed at which he achieved this breakthrough was simply impossible. Besides them, Hua Yong and Shu Mu Dan, who had been observing the battle from their garden on Twin Spirit Island, were terrified. Hua Yong widened his eyes and asked, "Just who is he?" When he saw Xianxia lying unconscious on Chef's back, he thought that the latter was severely wounded, so he didn't mind him. However, the slaughter just now proved that Xianxia was in peak condition rather than being injured. Shu Mu then asked in a shaking voice, "Husband, could you do that in such a short period of time?" She was talking about whether her husband was able to kill 8 mid-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters in an instant. After giving it a thought, Hua Yong shook his head. "Impossible. Even I wouldn't be able to kill so many Fifth Order cultivators in such a short moment." Shu Mu Dan let out a breath. "Now, it seems that he's the strongest person on Lan Yurua's side. Perhaps he's even stronger than her." A puzzled Hua Yong asked, since he had such power, why didn't he participate in the battle earlier? It wasn't until the most critical moment that he made a move. He must have his own reasons. Shu Mu Dan fell into her thoughts. Hua Yong commented, "Profound Yang Mountain will have to retreat without achieving their goal. Lan Yurua is very powerful to begin with, and now she has this person's help, so the 3 mountain lords won't be able to defeat them." Shu Mu Dan said, "If that person is really stronger than Lan Yurua, we'll need to come up with a plan." "Husband." Hua Yong's face twitched as he understood what she meant. Meanwhile, Xianxia reached the battlefield of the 4 Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, as he pushed out his spear towards Yun Fei Bai as he bellowed, "Old dog, die!" Yun Fei Bai turned his head, and when he saw that it was Yang Kai, his eyes turned bloodshot. "Brat! It's you!" The fact that Yang Kai had pierced his chest with a spear some time ago was a complete humiliation for him. Took Yunfei by a whole month to recover from that wound. Now that he met his enemy again, it was expected that he was incensed. He immediately ignored Lan Yu Rua and hacked his axe at Yang Kai. The reason he was injured at that time was that he had underestimated his opponent, for he had never expected that someone would have the guts to harm him in profound Yang Mountain. Otherwise, in his opinion, a newly promoted Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master would never be able to hurt him. Now, he finally had the chance to get his revenge. As he brought down his axe, though, his expression changed as he called out in shock, "You're a Sixth Order?" Yang Kai's aura was as conspicuous as ever, so anyone who wasn't a fool would be able to detect it, and it was absolutely clear that he was in the Sixth Order. No way. He was still a newly ascended Fifth Order when I met him 1 month ago. Why is he a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master now? Despite the doubt in his mind, Yun Fei Bai remained merciless with his actions as he madly infused his world force into his axe. As soon as Yang Kai's spear came into contact with the axe, Yun Fei Bai's expression changed drastically as he felt an immense force sweeping over him. The impact cracked his hands so badly that he almost lost grip of his axe. His expression turned horrified as he realized that Yang Kai was indeed a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master, or else the latter couldn't have showcased this kind of strength. Looking down, he saw that his perlicue had ripped apart and blood was now streaming out of the wound. He was unable to stop his hand from trembling violently. At that moment, he was dumbstruck. When he saw Yang Kai 1 month ago, the latter was just a new Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master. However, when they met again this time, he realized that the latter also looked like a new Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master. Even though Yang Kai was really a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master, he should be weaker than Yun Fei Bai, who had millennia of accumulation in his current order. It should be impossible that a newly promoted Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master like Yang Kai had a stronger heritage. Nevertheless, the truth was that Yun Fei Bai had suffered a setback. Both Yang Kai's strength and world force were simply overwhelming. While Yun Fei Bai was lost in a dazed state, Yang Kai came at him with his spear again and bellowed, "On this day, the golden crow casts the sun. Below the heavens, above the earth, only I am supreme." A series of caws were heard as a great sun suddenly rose from Yang Kai's back. Like a real sun, it was scorching hot as it cast its glow on the world below. Furthermore, there seemed to be a 3-legged exotic bird flying around this great Sunday. A horrifying aura spread out which caused a large part of the fog around Twin Spirit Island to evaporate in an instant. Under the great sun, Yang Kai was seen wielding the spear in a heroic manner as his weapon's power dazzled the world. Gongqing and Zhouya, who were attacking the proprietress, turned to look at him with trembling eyes. Divine manifestation! In the garden, Hua Yong was dumbfounded as he stared at the great sun in disbelief. How is that possible? Shu Mu Dan parted her lips, which were now covered with her hands. Divine manifestations were exclusive to high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters. They had never heard of a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master being able to wield one. If they found out that Yang Kai had already comprehended Golden Crow casts the sun when he was still an Emperor Realm cultivator, they would probably faint from shock. The dazzling great sun cast a radiant glow on Yun Fei Bai's flustered expression. Right after the divine manifestation appeared, Yang Kai's aura grew to horrifying heights. A dazzling red-gold light washed over the azure dragon spear in his hands as the pitch-black Golden Crow's true fire seemed able to burn down the entire world. As Yang Kai thrust out his spear, the world around him trembled. There was no way Yun Fei Bai would be able to dodge this attack, so at this life-and-death moment, he roared and madly infused his world force into his axe, which suddenly shone brightly as it clashed with Azure Dragon's spear head-on. Since he was unable to dodge, he had no choice but to meet the enemy head-on. Only by doing so would he stand a chance to survive. Following a loud boom, shockwaves erupted as a halo of light exploded outwards. The glow of the axe dimmed greatly. After the clash, the axe's spirituality seemed to have been damaged, which went to show how terrifying the spear's power was. Azure Dragon's spear pressed forward, knocking away the axe as it continued to pierce out. Yang Kai, who was holding the spear, wore a fierce expression on his face as murderous intent surged from his form. At this moment, an inch from death, Yunfei retreated hastily in an attempt to flee, but his expression changed the next moment. That was because he realized that the space around him had become extremely viscous. It was as though he had been bound by a mysterious force which rendered him unable to move as he pleased. Right? This bastard is a master of the Tao of space. That was the first thing that came to Yunfei's mind. Although he managed to break free from the space principle's restriction in the next moment, he had lost his only chance to escape the attack. Watching as the spear rapidly penetrated his chest, he sprayed out a mouthful of blood. The pain in his chest was excruciating, and there was a black flame burning through his wound. It was the second time he had been run through by this spear. The first time took place 1 month ago when his chest was pierced by Xianxia's spear. It took him 1 month before he recovered from that wound. This time around, 3 sixth-order mountain lords of profound Yang Mountain had come all the way here with their dozens of subordinates. Initially, Yunfei thought that he could get his revenge, but he hadn't expected to be wounded in exactly the same way again. This time was far more severe. Although his injury was serious previously, there wasn't a risk of him losing his life. However, there was Golden Crow's true fire burning in his wound now. Xianxia withdrew his spear, bringing with it a lot of boiling blood. Before the blood even dropped to the lake, it evaporated because of Golden Crow's true fire. Then, Xianxia aimed his spear at Yunfei's head, as he was determined to end his life. "Don't you dare kill second brother." At the critical moment, Zhouya came at Xianxia from behind. Her sword turned into countless sword waves. Every sword wave contained the world force of a sixth-order open heaven realm master. Xianxia furrowed his brow and leaped away. Seizing the chance, Zhouya hurled out a long piece of red cloth and draped it around the injured Yunfei before fleeing into the distance. At the same time, she exclaimed, "Third brother, run." She was truly terrified. The guy, who had remained unconscious all this time, suddenly woke up and killed 9 of their subordinates in an instant. Not only had he severely injured Yunfei, but he had also managed to showcase a divine manifestation. The power he possessed was inconceivable. If he were on his own, the 3 mountain lords could have joined forces and dealt with him. However, he also had the now maddened Lan Yurua on his side. There was no way the 3 of them could defeat these 2 people. Moreover, Yunfei had been critically injured, so Zhouya knew the only option was to run. On the other hand, Gongqing felt immensely pressured as he had to battle against the proprietress on his own. There was nothing else he could do apart from defending himself. Upon hearing Zhouya's words, he directly used a feint to gain some distance before he fled from the battlefield. However, a relentless proprietress turned into a ray of light and chased after him. Initially, Xianxia wanted to pursue Yunfei and Zhouya as well, but he suddenly frowned and gazed at the proprietress. The next instant, he moved to intercept her. Presently, she was clad in a scarlet artifact armor. With both her hands holding the great sword, she looked quite valiant. However, her eyes were completely red and she was engulfed in rich monster chi. Facing Xianxia, she hacked at him with her sword without hesitation. Xianxia raised his spear to parry the attack, and following a loud clang, he was sent flying several thousand meters away while the proprietress figure shook a little. After stabilizing her footing, she charged at him again. Her sword seemed to have turned into a storm and blasted towards Xianxia. It was the first time Xianxia saw her in such a state. Earlier, he could feel that there was something wrong with her, which was why he decided to stop her and let her rest first. However, it never crossed his mind that she couldn't even recognize him now. As his gaze fell upon the scarlet artifact armor, he knitted his brow, knowing that something was wrong with it, as it seemed to contain horrifying monster chi that was affecting her mind. If she couldn't come to her senses in time, her mind would be completely corrupted by the monster chi. It would be too late to save her by then. It wasn't the right time for him to ask chef and accountant what had happened, nor was he in the mood to chase after Zhouya and the others. Left with no choice, he could only wield his azure dragon spear and ward off her attacks while exclaiming, "Proprietress! Wake up! It's me!" The proprietress ignored him as the monster chi around her thickened. Every strike she made carried immense force, and Xianxia found it increasingly hard to deal with her. It had to be noted that Xianxia had a 4,000-meter-long half-dragon form, so he possessed incredible physical strength. It was hard to imagine that the proprietress could use such a monstrous force despite her delicate figure. However, given the way she used her power, it must be pretty taxing for her. When Zhouya and the others turned their heads and saw that Yang Kai and Lan Yurua had gotten into an intense battle, they breathed a sigh of relief despite not knowing what had happened. They were truly worried that Yang Kai and Lan Yurua would pursue them. Then Zhouya looked down and saw Yunfei by spitting out a mouthful of blood. The blood coming out of his mouth was boiling hot, as though it contained a scorching heat, and she exclaimed, "How are you, second brother?" Yunfei by covered the wound on his chest with his hand as a sense of resentfulness flashed through his eyes. "It's Golden Crow's true fire. That brat condensed a high-rank power." As he spoke, he sprayed out another mouthful of boiling blood. Zhouya comforted him by saying, "Hang in there, second brother. I'm sure when we return to Profound Yang Mountain, Big Brother will have a way to help you." Yunfei by nodded his head and fell silent as he pushed his power to suppress the Golden Crow's true fire in his body in order to stop the wound from worsening. The people who surrounded Chef and Accountant on the lake had dispersed by now. Since the three mountain lords were gone, they certainly wouldn't dare to remain. They had hurriedly followed Zhouya and the others back to Profound Yang Mountain. Chef and Accountant didn't chase their opponents as there were only the two of them. If they pushed the enemy too far, they might fall into a perilous situation instead. Upon seeing that Yang Kai and the proprietress were locked in a fierce battle, Chef anxiously screamed, "Oh no. The proprietress has lost her rationality and is fighting against Yang Boy. What should we do?" Accountant yelled, "Don't hurt her, Yang Kai. Wake her up immediately." "I'm trying," Yang Kai replied while dodging the attacks. However, he wasn't sure how he could make the proprietress regain her senses. If this matter dragged on, she would fall into critical danger. It would be terrible if she was left with some irreversible damage. Inside the garden, Huayong and Shumu Dan gazed silently at the water mirror. Through the reflection, they could see two figures engaging in an intense battle in the sky. The area around the lake was a mess. The barrier around the lake had stood for thousands of years, but it was now almost destroyed due to this one battle. After observing for a time, Huayong wore a helpless smile and muttered, "Is this really a battle between Sixth Order Open Heaven Masters? It looks more like a clash between those Seventh Order Masters." Shumudan added, "Lan Yurua seems to have been affected by the monster chi in that scarlet armor and lost her mind. It's the best chance to lend her a hand now, husband. It'll be too late if you wait any longer." After giving it a thought, Huayong nodded, "You're right, my wife. Please come with me." And Shu Mudan nodded gently and retracted the mirror. Then they leaped into the air together and flew out. A moment later, the fog separated and revealed the figures of Twin Spirit Island's island masters. Upon seeing them, Chef and Accountant appeared vigilant. Shu Mudan hurriedly said, "Please don't be nervous. We mean no harm." Huayong added, "We were cultivating in seclusion to comprehend a secret technique, but it never crossed our minds that such an astonishing battle had taken place outside of Twin Spirit Island. Now that Madame Lan is in danger, we have a secret technique that might be able to help her regain clarity. Please allow us to use it on her." After exchanging glances, Chef and Accountant immediately figured out the couple's intentions. Earlier, the proprietress brought them to Twin Spirit Island in order to seek shelter with the island masters and ward off those from Profound Yang Mountain. Unfortunately, Huayong and his wife were not willing to interfere in this matter, so they refused to meet them. Cultivating in seclusion was just an excuse they had come up with. Now that those from Profound Yang Mountain were forced to leave and Yang Kai and the proprietress had showcased incredible strength, this couple must have been worried that those from First In would hold a grudge against them, so they hurriedly came out to offer assistance. Despite the fact that Chef and Accountant understood all this, they didn't point it out, as the most important thing right now was to wake the proprietress up. As such, Chef lowered his head without hesitation. "If you're able to help my proprietress, we'll owe you a favor." Accountant added, "Please lend us a hand." Huayong nodded in return. "We'll begin right away." Then he exchanged glances with his wife. After a nod, he fished out a flute while she sat cross-legged. As she waved her hand, a zither appeared on her knees. The pleasant music of the flute and the zither sounded and permeated the air as it whisked across the area like a pair of invisible hands. The music seemed to have a soothing effect wherever it went. The island masters of Twin Spirit Island were experts in the Tao of music. The melody coming from the flute and zither were soft, which soothed the mind and soul of those who listened to it. Both of them were in the sixth order open heaven realm, and the music they were playing was targeted at the proprietress, so it was fairly effective. While they were locked in a pitched battle, Xianxia could feel that the proprietress had suddenly become less violent, and there was a sense of struggle behind her bloodshot eyes. It was apparent that she was starting to regain her senses. All of a sudden, she turned her head and glowered at Hua Yong and Shu Mudan with a gaze filled with murderous intent. The next moment, her monster chi surged as she charged towards the couple with her sword in an imposing manner. Hua Yong was stunned while Shu Mudan paled. They had witnessed how formidable the proprietress was, so they knew that they wouldn't be a match for her even if they joined forces. Furthermore, it wasn't appropriate for Shu Mudan to fight in her current condition. Therefore, after only a short moment of hesitation, Hua Yong dashed towards his wife and draped his arm around her waist before returning to Twin Spirit Island. At the same time he yelled, "Her mind is completely controlled by monster chi. We're unable to help her." After they crashed into the barrier, the fog moved and concealed the entrance. Upon seeing that, chef and accountant stomped their feet on the ground with exasperation. A relentless proprietress turned her sword into a beam of red light and slashed across the fog. In an instant, a huge gap was carved out and revealed the view inside Twin Spirit Island. Seeing that she was about to attack again, Xianxia charged towards her and widened his arms before confining her to his embrace. Xianxia was incredibly strong, and as he embraced the proprietress, the scarlet battle armor on her body started cracking. With her hands restricted, she let out a bestial roar and sank her teeth into his shoulder. Feeling that a piece of his flesh on the shoulder had been ripped off, Xianxia groaned. As he endured the excruciating pain, he yelled, "Proprietress, forgive me." Then, he bent his head backwards before forcefully smashing it into her forehead, delivering a vicious headbutt. Following a loud thud, the proprietress almost fell unconscious. Hong hong hong. After 3 more headbutts, Xianxia started seeing stars as well, but he could feel that the woman in his embrace had calmed down a little. Without hesitation, he took off her helmet and threw it away. Then he pressed his forehead against hers and pushed his divine sense, transferring his soul-warming lotus to her. He wasn't certain whether the soul-warming lotus could help the proprietress at this point. However, since she couldn't even recognize him as she beat him up, it was obvious that her mind had been heavily affected by the monster chi. The soul-warming lotus had an incredibly soothing effect, so it might help restore her mental clarity. It was the first time Xianxia showed the soul-warming lotus in public since he obtained it. This kind of supreme treasure could not be exposed easily, or else it would attract some unnecessary attention. However, since the proprietress was in danger, he had no choice but to do it. Xianxia could feel the proprietress shuddering as the soul-warming lotus entered her body. Following that, the redness in her eyes receded like a tide as her gaze became clear again, and elated Xianxia to know that the soul-warming lotus had started taking effect. A moment later, the proprietress darted her gaze around as her vision focused. She seemed a little lost while staring at the man. Xianxia placated her by saying, "You're fine now." The proprietress batted her eyes, but upon realizing something, she started struggling. "Let go of me." An uncertain Xianxia asked, "Are you sure you're awake?" The woman glowered at him, then he let her go. Following that, she shook her figure a little, whereupon the scarlet artifact armor on her body turned into a layer of blood mist and disappeared into thin air. The sword she had been holding in her hands was also gone all of a sudden. However, at this moment the proprietress seemed to be in a terrible state. Her aura was unstable, and her entire figure was crimson as a metallic tang exuded from her body. Apparently, the side effects of activating the blood monster battle dress were quite intense. The redness in her skin was caused by the burning of her own blood essence. Chef and accountant rushed over before looking worriedly at her. "Proprietress, I'm fine." She shook her head. Still anxious, they stared fixedly at her. The proprietress saw this and burst into laughter. I'm really fine. I just need some time to recuperate. It was only then that chef and accountant breathed a sigh of relief. The fog around Twin Spirit Island separated as Hua Yong stepped out of it again. However, this time, Shu Mu Dan wasn't by his side this time. He was still reeling from shock. Earlier, he and his wife were unable to suppress Lan Yu Ru's monster qi, even though they had joined forces. Instead of calming her down, they had only drawn her aggression towards them. Left with no other choice, they could only retreat to Twin Spirit Island. He couldn't figure out what this strange young man had done that could allow Lan Yu Rua to return to her senses in such a short time. However, it wasn't the right time to inquire about this issue. Since his expression of goodwill didn't yield any results earlier, he naturally wanted to make up for it this time around. Therefore, upon his appearance, he immediately said in embarrassment, "Congratulations, Madame Lan, for overcoming this crisis. My wife and I are truly sorry that we were unable to help you in any way as we were too weak." The proprietress shot him a dispassionate glance. She was vexed at the fact that Hua Yong didn't even bother to meet her despite the fact that she had brought chef, accountant, and Yang Kai to side with Twin Spirit Island. Nevertheless, if she were in his shoes, she might have done the same. So, she knew that he had done nothing wrong. After all, they were neither friends nor relatives to begin with. They only had one discussion during her previous visit, hence, it was understandable that he wasn't willing to invite trouble to himself. Although her mind was a mess earlier, she could still faintly remember what was going on. Certainly, she was aware that Hua Yong and Shu Mu Dan attempted to help her with their music. After a nod, she said faintly, "I appreciate your thoughts, Island Master Hua." Yang Kai gazed at Hua Yong and asked, "Island Master Hua, my proprietress desperately needs a place to recuperate. Will you please open your doors for us?" Hua Yong replied, "If you're okay with it, you can recuperate on my Twin Spirit Island." Faced with this sixth-order open heaven realm young man who was able to use a divine manifestation, he didn't dare to be negligent. Yun Fei Bai was severely wounded by this young man while Gung Qing and Zhou Ye were forced to retreat. In the entire shadowless cave heaven, perhaps only the head mountain lord of Profound Yang Mountain was a match for him. Hua Yong already had the intention to express his goodwill, so he naturally wouldn't turn him down at this point. "Good." Yang Kai nodded his head and turned to look at the proprietress. With a pale face, she coughed but didn't reject the idea. She indeed needed a quiet place to recover. In the entire shadowless cave heaven, all other places were unsafe except for the headquarters of the three great forces. After all, she wouldn't want to be affected by the astral wind while she was trying to heal herself. The fog moved again and revealed a passageway. Hua Yong warmly led the way while Yang Kai and the others followed the proprietress. Stepping into Twin Spirit Island, Shu Mu Dan, whose belly was bulging, came over and greeted them in an elegant manner. The proprietress' injuries needed immediate treatment. Even though the soul-warming lotus had soothed her mind and dispelled the monster qi for her, her condition would exacerbate if she didn't start healing herself soon. Therefore, after only the briefest of small talk, Hua Yong immediately arranged a secret room for her to recuperate in seclusion. Outside the secret room, Yang Kai said, "Please take good care of proprietress." A stunned chef asked, "Where are you going?" Yang Kai grinned, "To pay a visit to Profound Yang Mountain." Chef exclaimed, "You want to head to Profound Yang Mountain?" Accountant was shocked as well. To the side, Hua Yong dissuaded him by saying, "Please don't be impetuous, little brother. Profound Yang Mountain is the most powerful great force in the shadowless cave heaven, and they have many strong masters on their side. Although you're formidable, you won't be able to deal with so many people on your own. Besides the fact that Gung Qing and Zhou Yu are in the sixth order open heaven realm, the head mountain lord Mao Zhe is just one step away from the seventh order. He is the strongest person in the shadowless cave heaven." Yang Kai arched his brow. "He's the most powerful here? I should meet him, then." Chef worriedly tried to change his mind. "Young boy, why don't you wait for the proprietress to recover? You can't go there on your own. If anything happens to you, how are we supposed to explain ourselves to her?" Yang Kai patted his shoulder. "Don't worry. Although the people from Profound Yang Mountain are strong, they can't possibly harm me. I'll be back soon." The young man's arrogance stunned Hua Yong. Even though Yang Kai had indeed showcased incredible might in the battle just now, Profound Yang Mountain was deeply rooted in this place and wasn't easy to infringe upon. If he wasn't careful enough, he would lose his life there. However, since they were not friends or relatives, Hua Yong reckoned that he wasn't in any place to keep dissuading him. Yang Kai turned to look at him. Do you have some wine, Island Master Hua? Hua Yong became startled for a moment before fishing out a gourd from his space ring. This wine took me over 300 years to brew. Is it strong enough? Yang Kai asked. A proud Hua Yong replied, it's definitely strong enough. With a smile, Yang Kai carried the wine gourd in one arm and said, that's great. See you soon. After finishing his words, he shot into the sky. Chef said anxiously, be careful. As Hua Yong watched him leave, he slowly shook his head. Little brother Yang is pretty feisty. He sighed, then turned to gaze at chef and accountant. If you need anything, just inform my subordinates, and they'll handle it for you. My wife and I will stop bothering you. Many thanks. Chef and accountant cupped their fists at him. Up in the air, Yang Kai's figure flickered as he moved towards Profound Yang Mountain at full speed, space principles swirling around him. In order to deal with those from Profound Yang Mountain, the proprietress had paid a hefty price. If it weren't for Yang Kai having the soul-warming lotus with him, she would have lost her mind to madness. Certainly, he wouldn't let those from Profound Yang Mountain off so easily. If it weren't because the proprietress needed help, he would have chased after them instead of waiting until now. With that said, it wasn't too late to pursue them. He was a master of the Tao of space, so none were comparable to him when it came to the speed of fleeing or pursuing enemies. On top of that, Yunfei Bai was severely wounded, so although Geng Qing and Zhou Yu were not injured, having to drag the former with them would slow them down significantly. Yang Kai was confident he could intercept them before they returned to Profound Yang Mountain. 3 figures were seen rapidly flying through the air. They were the 3 mountain lords who were in a rush to return to Profound Yang Mountain. Geng Qing and Zhou Yu supported Yunfei Bai's weight on either side as they moved at the speed of lightning. Yunfei Bai still coughed up boiling blood from time to time, and there was also a black flame burning around the wound in his chest. Although he was a 6th-order open heaven realm master, he could only suppress the flame to stop his wound from worsening. He was unable to disperse it. Golden Crow's true fire was a high-rank fire element power that could burn all of creation. Unless Yunfei Bai had an element power in the same order that could restrict the flames, he would be unable to resolve it in a short period of time. Therefore, he had to return to Profound Yang Mountain and seek the head mountain lord's help. Or, he could spend a painfully long time recuperating in seclusion to resolve the crisis. While he looked very battered, his eyes were filled with resentment. His chest was injured twice. 1 month ago, he had underestimated the young man, who successfully launched a sneak attack on him. However, this time he was wounded in a frontal clash with him. He could not figure out how the young man could go from the 5th order to the 6th order in just 1 month. Did he conceal his cultivation previously? Or did he really achieve an ascension after 1 month? He had a feeling it was the former. The young man must have a method to conceal his cultivation, which made Yunfei Bai misjudge his true strength, resulting in the series of setbacks he had suffered. Yunfei Bai was completely vexed, thinking that he had to be more careful when dealing with that strange young man in the future, as he was pretty cunning. As his emotions fluctuated, his wounds became irritated and he sprayed out a mouthful of boiling blood. How are you, second brother? Zhou Ye asked with concern. Yunfei Bai shook his head. It won't kill me. Geng Qing let out a sigh. Many of the top cultivators from Profound Yang Mountain had taken part in the siege. Initially, they thought that they could easily defeat Lan Yu Rua and her small group, but not only did they become battered, they had also lost quite a number of subordinates. With that said, their siege this time wasn't totally unfruitful. At the very least, they had found out Lan Yu Rua's true strength as well as that of the mysterious young man. As a 6th-order open heaven realm master, that young man was able to use a divine manifestation, which was simply inconceivable. They reckoned that they had to report this discovery to the head mountain lord, so that he could be prepared. One of the reasons Profound Yang Mountain had become the most powerful great force in the shadowless cave heaven was that they had the highest number of 6th-order open heaven realm masters. Secondly, the head mountain lord was truly mighty, as he was just 1 step away from the 7th-order open heaven realm. If it weren't because resources in the shadowless cave heaven were scarce, he would have broken through already. However, now, there came a young man who was able to use a divine manifestation in the shadowless cave heaven. He was probably just as powerful as the head mountain lord. Faced with such a foe, they had to put their guard up. While pondering on these issues, Xianxia suddenly took a glance behind her with concern. Will he come after us? Gengqing replied, I don't think so. Lan Yurua must have used an artifact that comes with extreme drawbacks, so she should be in a terrible state. That guy will have to deal with her instead of coming after us. Moreover, we're not pushovers. The reason they had fled was that Inflate was injured, so they had to bring him back to heal. Their wariness of Yang Kai and Lan Yurua came second. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard someone bellowing from behind. Inflate, where do you think you're going? Xianxia's expression changed as she turned her head, only to see a ray of light rapidly approaching them from the horizon. The ray of light kept flickering, and with every flicker, the distance between them shortened significantly. It wouldn't take long before the ray of light caught up with them, so she exclaimed, He's really coming after us. Gengqing bellowed, That brat is going too far. Profound Yang Mountain had been around in the shadowless cave heaven for over 10,000 years, and they were undoubtedly the most powerful great force here. All of the mountain lords were famous and formidable. There had never been a time when they were chased down like they were beat dogs. He turned his head and ordered, Stop him! The dozens of mid-rank open heaven realm masters, who had been following the three mountain lords, sported bitter expressions upon hearing that. Earlier, Yang Kai easily killed 9 of their companions and even injured the second mountain lord, so how were they supposed to oppose him? However, they wouldn't dare to disobey Gengqing's order, so they forced themselves to stop and took up a formation to await their enemy's arrival. On the other hand, Gengqing and the others kept flying towards profound Yang Mountain at full speed. Yang Kai's figure kept flickering as he watched Gengqing and the others flee. Popping off the lid of the wine gourd, he lifted it to his mouth and downed a large swig. After he was done with the wine, he threw the gourd away, shattering it on the ground below. While feeling tipsy, Yang Kai raised his spear as his murderous intent surged. Slowly moving forward, he shook his head and declared, I'll only say this once. Scram if you don't want to die. I won't spare anyone who dares to get in my way. Yang Kai became increasingly overbearing as he flew forward, his aura erupting as it covered the sky and caused the clouds to welter. The dozens of mid-rank open heaven realm masters were horrified as many of them subconsciously took a few steps back. As they recalled the sight of their 9 companions being killed, they started shuddering. Just then, a thin and tall man yelled, What's there to be afraid of? He's on his own while we have so many people on our side. As long as we make a move together, there's no way he... Before he could finish his words, he gasped as Yang Kai, who was supposed to be kilometers away, abruptly appeared in front of him, their faces almost touching. Yang Kai belched and puffed out a breath filled with alcohol at him. The person was a 5th-order open heaven realm master, so he was pretty agile. He immediately leaped backwards in an attempt to widen the gap between Yang Kai and him. However, the next moment, his expression was transformed by fear as he realized that regardless of how much he moved backwards, Yang Kai remained standing right in front of him. The view around him never changed one bit, as though the space around him had been extended infinitely. Near distant horizon. Following Yang Kai's sharp rise in cultivation, the power of the secret techniques he could use had improved proportionally. He was already able to injure the 6th-order Yunfei by when he was still in the 5th order. Since he was now a 6th-order open heaven realm master, there was no way a 5th-order master like this man could escape from him. This tall man was apparently a resolute person, so upon realizing that he was unable to flee, he roared and surged his world force before sending out a divine ability at Yang Kai. His companions around him also made a move at the same time. At that instant, the lights of divine abilities erupted as they flew at Yang Kai. Water reflects the moon, Yang Kai shouted as a full moon rose behind him. The moon cast a glow on all of them and sent chills down their spines. Their divine abilities seemed to have been frozen as they moved forward like snails. The tall man and the others were soon covered in a layer of frost, causing them to shiver like quails in the winter. Additionally, shields with dragon patterns on them started appearing around Yang Kai. A dragon pressure could be felt coming from these thick shields, and every dragon had its head connected with its tail. Dragon shields. Upon activating these 2 secret techniques, Yang Kai thrust out his spear in rapid succession. Wherever the spear shadows passed, time seemed to freeze. When Yang Kai retracted his spear, the tall man and the others were rendered immovable on their spots. It wasn't until this moment that their divine abilities crashed into the dragon shields around Yang Kai and caused them to flicker. In the end, they couldn't harm him one bit. The louder you shout, the quicker you die. Yang Kai swept his spear across the air. Then the people standing in front of him exploded into blood mist, leaving no trace behind. Holding the spear with one hand, he swept a cold glance over the survivors in an imposing manner and asked, "Who else would like to make a move?" All of them fell silent as they stared dazedly at Yang Kai. Gulps were clearly audible, and all of their eyes were filled with terror. Although Yang Kai had previously killed 9 of their companions just outside Twin Spirit Island, they were still astounded upon seeing the same thing now. They knew that they might be able to stop this young man from going further if they joined forces. After all, he was only one man regardless of how powerful he was. On the other hand, they had many people on their side who could fight. Nevertheless, given the power Yang Kai had showcased, it wasn't hard for him to kill 10 or 20 of them. No one was willing to be the unlucky one. After what had happened to the tall man, none of them dared to say a word. "If no one is making a move, I'm leaving." Yang Kai snorted and walked off. His chest felt like it was burning due to the alcohol as his murderous intent was rampaging. All of them looked despicable to him, and he had the urge to kill them with his spear. However, since these people were not willing to make a move, Yang Kai didn't have a reason to flare up. Furthermore, his destination wasn't this place. The people separated to the sides as Yang Kai safely passed through the crowd. It wasn't until Yang Kai flew off that they breathed a sigh of relief, as though they had just escaped from death's door. One of them exclaimed, "High-rank powers." All the powers that Guy showed were high rank. They couldn't detect anything before Yang Kai made a move. But once he did, they realized that both Yang Kai's water reflects the moon and Dragon Shield's secret techniques were derived from high-rank powers, to say nothing of the fact that he had previously showcased Golden Crow casts the sun, which was a divine manifestation exclusive to high-rank open heaven realm masters. "It's no wonder that he's so powerful," someone remarked. Since all the element powers he refined were high-rank, it explained why he was so formidable. "What should we do now?" a woman asked, looking lost. Gung Qing told them to stop Yang Kai, but other than the tall man and the others from his group, the rest of them had never made a move. They couldn't explain themselves when they returned, so it was expected that they would be punished. However, if they never returned, there was nowhere else they could settle in the shadowless cave heaven. Faced with such a dilemma, they weren't sure what to do. After a brief discussion, they decided to go back to Profound Yang Mountain first and accept punishment. It was still better than wandering around the shadowless cave heaven. Gung Qing and Zhou Ye, while supporting Yun Fei Bai's weight, kept looking back. Upon realizing that Yang Kai was nowhere in sight, they set their minds at ease, thinking that he had been intercepted. In the end, it seemed their subordinates were not really useless. One day later, Profound Yang Mountain came into their sight from a distance. Zhou Ye breathed a sigh of relief as she patted Yun Fei Bai's back and gently said, "Hang in there, second brother. We'll reach home soon." Yun Fei Bai nodded his head, his face still as pale as a white sheet. He had been trying to stop his wound from worsening while returning to the sect. However, Golden Crow's true fire was indeed incredible. The dark flame that was burning in his chest made him feel unbearable pain. All of a sudden, Gung Qing looked forward and sported a doubtful expression. "Who is that?" There was a figure standing like a dead tree on a mountain peak in front of them as he gazed silently at them. As their eyes met, the figure curled his lips into a scornful smile and pointed his spear towards them before yelling, "You're too slow. Do you know how long I've been waiting here?" The color drained from Zhou Ye's face. "It's him." Gung Qing was stunned. "Why is he here? How dare he get in front of us?" They had been moving at full speed, and even though Yang Kai was a master of the Tao of space, he shouldn't have been ahead of them. Moreover, they had ordered several dozen subordinates to stop him. Had he broken through the defense of several dozen people on his own? Furthermore, this place was very near Profound Yang Mountain. Once they got into a fight here, the head mountain lord would be able to lend them a hand within moments. When the 4 great mountain lords joined forces, no one in the shadowless cave heaven was a match for them. Therefore, how could Yang Kai have the guts to intercept them here? While Gung Qing was still lost in his thoughts, he saw Yang Kai coming at them with his spear as the latter bellowed, "Yun Fei Bai, suffer death." They were unable to describe how amazing the attack was, as it ignored the obstacles of space and seemed to shatter the world around it. Although it was an attack that was aimed at Yun Fei Bai, Zhouya and Gung Qing felt as though they had been targeted as well. The three mountain lords were dumbstruck. Zhouya immediately wielded her sword while Gung Qing used his most powerful divine abilities. Ignoring his own injury, Yun Fei Bai roared and summoned a scroll, on which the characters started moving and turned into beams of sword chi before they shot out. Hong hong hong. Explosive sounds were heard as halos of light filled the sky. The three mountain lords were forced backward as their eyes trembled. "How is that possible?" Zhouya exclaimed. Although the three of them had joined forces, they were almost unable to parry the young man's strike. All of them were in the sixth order open heaven realm, so how was it possible that this young man was so much stronger than them? When the young man suddenly awakened and lashed out outside of Twin Spirit Island some time ago, she didn't directly confront him as she simply launched a long-range attack before dragging Yun Fei Bai away, so she hadn't been able to properly gauge his strength. It wasn't until they traded moves now that she realized how horrifying Yang Kai was. His world force was clearly far denser and more vigorous than hers. After the attack, Yang Kai didn't stop as he unleashed his supreme limitless spear art to the extreme. Like a waterfall, the spear shadows rained down and engulfed the three mountain lords, each shadow containing a terrifying world force within it. Certainly, Yun Fei Bai and the others wouldn't dare to be negligent as they were extremely on edge already. Although they had tried their best, they still found it difficult to parry the bombardment of attacks. Every strike was as violent as lightning, and the rich dragon pressure that filled the air around them was disrupting their focus. Previously, the Azure Dragon Spear was just a sharp weapon in Yang Kai's hands. However, since his ascension to the open heaven realm, he was able to bring out its true power. During his breakthrough, Yang Kai merged his small sealed world with his small universe. His small sealed world had a rich heritage to begin with, and he had further enhanced it with remnants of the blood monster cave heaven. As such, he managed to greatly enhance the background of his small universe, allowing him to fight against seasoned open heaven realm masters from the outset. However, without the Azure Dragon Spear, he couldn't possibly battle against three powerful masters on his own. After all, their thousands of years of accumulation were not just for show. The reason the proprietress was able to achieve that was that she had made use of the blood monster battle dress. In a battle between open heaven realm masters, the heritages of their small universes mattered the most. The barrage of attacks dazzled Yang Kai's opponents. Zhouya and Gung Qing were in a better state as they were still relatively uninjured. On the other hand, Yun Fei Bai was in a horrible state. He had been burned by Golden Crow's true fire to begin with, which caused his strength to plunge significantly, and presently half of Yang Kai's attacks were targeted at him. If Gung Qing and Zhouya hadn't gone all out to protect him, he would have been killed by Yang Kai already. Despite that, he was still in a perilous situation. The young man kept targeting him, as though he was determined to end his life, which caused him to groan in pain. After barely more than 10 breaths of intense battle, the mountains around them had been completely destroyed. The air was filled with dust and debris, and the world itself seemed to have turned pale. The black Golden Crow's true fire burning on the tip of Azure Dragon's spear made the three mountain lords extremely wary. After what had happened to Yun Fei Bai, Gung Qing and Zhouya wouldn't dare to come into contact with Golden Crow's true fire, so their movements were rather restricted. The space around them seemed to have become viscous as well. It was apparent that the young man had used a space secret technique while attacking them. "Who dares fight outside Profound Yang Mountain?" A stern voice was suddenly heard coming from Profound Yang Mountain. Then a gigantic figure that seemed able to cover the entire sky rose from the central peak. With a pair of grim-looking eyes, he stared at the people in battle. Yun Fei Bai, who was warding off Yang Kai's attacks with difficulty, yelled pitifully, "Big brother, save me." The giant eyes narrowed, and when the person realized what was going on, his expression turned furious as he bellowed, "How impudent, boy." After he finished speaking, the figure shrunk before a ray of light shot out of Profound Yang Mountain. It was apparent that the head mountain lord, Wuxia, was trying to come to their rescue upon realizing what was happening. Geng Qing and Zhou Ye were elated. The three of them were unable to fend off Yang Kai's attacks. However, things would be different if Mao Zhe joined them. After all, they were fully aware of how powerful their big brother was. With the spear in his hand, Yang Kai took a glance in the direction of Profound Yang Mountain and snorted, then he swept his weapon across the air to force back Geng Qing and the others. Following that, his figure flickered and he appeared right in front of Yun Fei Bai, who was still spitting blood. A flustered Yun Fei Bai immediately tried to retreat. Yang Kai stared coldly at him and silently used near-distant horizon. At that instant, the space around them extended infinitely. Even time seemed to have stopped flowing as people's thoughts became jumbled. Yun Fei Bai was horrified to learn that he was unable to widen the gap with Yang Kai, regardless of how hard he tried. He could only watch as Yang Kai came at him with his spear. Faced with this spear thrust, he felt the aura of death engulfing him. He roared as the scroll in his grip shone brightly and all the sword chi it could unleash condensed together and clashed with the azure dragon spear. Since Geng Qing and Zhou Ye were assisting their second brother from the side, they were also affected by the disturbance of near-distant horizon and time principles. Although they were able to break through it after just a moment, what came into their sight was the life and death clash between Yang Kai and Yun Fei Bai. "Boy, you dare!" The head mountain lord was heard roaring from a distance. An unfazed Yang Kai infused more power into his azure dragon spear, and a deafening dragon roar reverberated across the sky, causing the condensed sword chi to shatter. Following a whoosh, the sound of flesh being pierced rang out. Geng Qing and Zhou Ye became rooted to the spots as they looked dazedly forward. Head Mountain Lord Mao Zhe landed in front of them with a livid expression. Just 3,000 meters in front of them, Yang Kai was holding a spear with one hand as he remained in an aggressive posture. In front of him, Yun Fei Bai widened his eyes with fury as he froze in place. He was unable to move because the spear had pierced through his forehead and stuck out from the back of his head. The robust defense of a sixth-order open heaven realm master became as thin as paper when confronted with the azure dragon spear. The black golden crow's true fire was still burning on the tip of the spear and like a million snakes, expanded from Yun Fei Bai's forehead to the rest of his body. Time seemed to have stopped flowing at that moment. Yun Fei Bai's eyes darted around erratically. Although he was lethally injured, he didn't immediately lose his life, which went to show how potent the vitality of a sixth-order open heaven realm master was. However, his face kept twitching due to the excruciating pain. In front of him, Yang Kai's clothes were all ragged. There were countless wounds on his body that crisscrossed one another. Every wound was left with very pure sword chi, and the largest wound showed that he was almost cut in two through his chest. His entire figure was dyed gold due to his golden blood. The final desperate attack of a sixth-order open heaven realm master was no joke. If it weren't because Yang Kai had a sturdy defense as a half-dragon, he would have been cut into countless pieces. As Mao Zhe watched the sight silently, he narrowed his eyes and said, "Junior brother, if you have any demands, just name them. This monarch won't turn you down as long as he can fulfill it." He called Yang Kai boy before he arrived at this place. But upon seeing that Yun Fei Bai's life was in his hands, he politely called him junior brother. Yang Kai turned his head and flashed a smile at him. "Can I really make any demand?" Mao Zhe replied dispassionately. "As long as it doesn't cross the line, anything is acceptable. What if I want you to trade his life for yours? Can you do that?" A hint of fury flashed across Mao Zhe's eyes. "You're funny, junior brother. Please think it through. The person you're trying to kill is the second mountain lord of Profound Yang Mountain. If you kill him, you'll be our enemy and all of us will never let you off. However, if you release him, you'll be our most honored guest. Are you trying to threaten me?" Yang Kai arched his brow. Mao Zhe impassively replied, "I'm just speaking the truth. Why do you keep spouting nonsense? My only goal here is to kill." Yang Kai suddenly roared and gripped his spear, surging his world force into it. Yun Fei Bai widened his eyes, and before he could react, his head exploded. The headless corpse convulsed as blood spurted out from his neck before collapsing to the ground. Geng Qing and Zhou Ye were stunned. Their second brother was killed right in front of them. Although Mao Zhe had come to their aid, Yun Fei Bai's head was still exploded and he died a horrible death. It had been thousands of years since they met, and it never crossed their minds that they would part ways for good on this day. At that instant, they still couldn't believe what had just happened. This place was just several hundred kilometers away from profound Yang Mountain. They were practically home. All of a sudden, they started to suspect that Yang Kai had deliberately decided to intercept them here. Otherwise, he could have chosen another, more convenient location. The only reason he would do this, though, was to lure the head mountain lord out of profound Yang Mountain. As they turned their heads, they saw Mao Zhe sporting a livid expression. His narrowed eyes gleamed with a dangerous glow as he ordered coldly, "Kill!"